Two, two. Two, check, hello. Chat, are you there? Hello. How's it going? What's up? How are we doing? We were just talking about the convenient timing of you showing up. You mean me showing up at the precise time that I normally do this stream? Is that what we're talking about? Me showing up right at the exact moment when I usually have to do this stream that we do every day. Iran launches an attack and you start streaming. Yeah, that's usually how it works. It's usually how it works. Things happen in the world and then we come on here to talk about them, don't we? Some stuff does seem to be happening right now, though, doesn't it? Some stuff really does seem to be happening. I don't know. Is this going to be another? I mean, I think we're past the stage of nothing ever happens, don't we? Aren't we? This whole like nothing ever happens thing, like stuff has been happening for a while now. It's been like multiple years of stuff happening all the time. Maybe we can just retire this whole nothing ever happens talking point. I think there's some kind of like dilation effect that occurs when so much stuff happens all the time. We lose sight of that. And we're like, nothing ever happens. But meanwhile, there's stuff happening. There's stuff happening all around us. There's crazy stuff constantly happening. And because there's so much stuff happening that it's like, what is this? We're getting close to the weeks where decades happen. Honestly, Risk Inverse, I think we've been in the weeks where decades happen since like 2016. I really do think that. You know, it's like so many decades have gone by since 2016. Do you even remember what your life was like before 2016? I don't. Do you remember what the world was like? Not really. Too many decades are happening too fast. I agree. We need to put a stop to this. I barely remember before 2020. Well, me too. And then since 2022, I don't know, just things keep accelerating. The accelerationists, I think, were maybe onto something. Weren't they? Things do be accelerating. So much happening that nothing has changed with Rob's location and stream sound. Absolutely right. I'm right here, exactly where I always am. I did have a listen to the sound. I'm not crazy about the sound. I'm on this Blue Yeti mic. There do seem to be some different settings on here. What do we think about this? I'm gonna cycle through these settings, chat. And you just let me know if there's any difference, if there's any improvement, okay? How about now? What do we think about this now? What do we think about this? Any different at all? Anything different? Better or worse? Louder? Okay. The sound is fine except you being muted. I'm not muted though. I can see the little bar moving up and down when I speak, so I know that that's not true. You watching the news? Why? Is anything going on? I don't know. I thought we were just gonna chit chat about sports or something today, or talk about different beverages or apples, different fruits that we might like. That's all I had planned for today. The cat trade pisses me off as a Wolves fan. I would understand that. I understand. I work so much. I miss you guys. Hope everyone is doing well. We hope you're doing well too, Weenus. Can see multiple hits on Tel Aviv on Al Jazeera Live. Shit's definitely hitting the fan. I guess we might as well just talk about this, shouldn't we? I shouldn't do this whole bit where I pretend not to be concerned about this. We should probably be covering this ongoing situation. It'll all work itself out. So what is even the title here? Is this the title? Let's see here. So first of all, there's this. This is the missile strike map in Israel, what it looks like right now. So if you're just getting caught up, obviously Israel's been continually bombing Lebanon. I saw there's people in these villages in southern Lebanon getting evacuation orders, almost identical to the Nakba. Getting evacuation orders. People being commanded to leave their homes, and we'll let you know when you can return, kind of thing. There was reports earlier today about Iran potentially striking Israel. And this is apparently what this is just a few moments ago. Sirens everywhere, 12:33 p.m.
Rob to talk you through all this.
22 months, wow, TRRS guns.
Barkley, thanks so much for the 22 months of Prime. I appreciate it. Israeli army says Iran has fired missiles at Israel. 4 minutes ago, flares seen in Tel Aviv sky. Israel says missiles launched from Iran. I wasn't sure about some of this stuff. I mean, there was reports earlier today about a possible Iran attack on Israel. And there was kind of speculation, is that real? Is that true? Is it manufacturing consent for some kind of preemptive strike on Iran? I don't know. Al Jazeera's live feed has footage of missiles hitting Tel Aviv. Well, I think that seems newsworthy. That seems newsworthy. I think we better take a look at that.
Were packed with people who, got ready for the holiday, for the new year, that will happen. The eve of Rosh Hashanah, the Jewish New Year, is on Wednesday, so people were shopping for, celebrating the New Year, but at the same time to be ready for what's happening right now.
Okay, Akiva,
Wow.
Can I ask you to stand by, if you don't mind? Can I ask you to do that for
I'm not
us?
legally allowed
Stay
to
on the
say
line,
what I hope those
and
missiles do.
I'm
No,
gonna
and
go
we're not
Iran,
going to speculate
and
on any of
I'm
that kind of
going to
stuff.
remind
We're
our
just
viewers,
tuning
I'm
into
sure
this
there are many
ongoing news
people who are tuning
story.
in right now. They will have got the alerts on their phones that there were Iranian missiles that were launched at Israel. Many people must be tuning in now. It is 16:51 GMT. That means it's just coming up on 8 p.m. local time.
We're just following this ongoing news story.
Actually, in Tehran.
And
what's happened is the following: that Israel says Iran.
I don't know. It's hard to even speculate about what this is going to mean, right? You still have the Biden administration like desperately trying to flail around, saying like, no, there's no escalation. There's no we've contained this regional war. Was this recent? This is a few moments ago. This is happening right now.
Those look like they're coming down. So those flashes, as we were saying earlier, are likely to be interceptions. So you're seeing downward and upward. The reason would be that missiles are falling on Tel Aviv right now, live, and the upward flare.
I fear a U.S. response is all but guaranteed, and this will go exactly the way Netanyahu wants. I mean, it is hard not to reach that conclusion, Husker. It is hard not to reach that conclusion. This is just crazy footage. This is crazy historic footage that I think we're looking at here.
Okay.
And I think it's going to be worthwhile to try and pay attention to the way that this is covered in Western media. You know, this is going to be framed as somehow, this like offensive attack, and Israel's role over the last year in creating this situation is obviously going to be ignored or obscured. And now this is going to be something that Israel or the United States or both are going to have to respond to.
Secretary General, which actually surged the tensions in the West Asia. What we're seeing this
is the boogeyman of the Middle East launching these. There will be more U.S. boots on the ground.
State television is a live coverage of the events in Tel Aviv. They're showing missiles coming. There is no direct reference about the whereabouts these missiles are.
I guess this is a moment when it's really, really easy to speculate about what might happen, but I guess my instinct right now in kind of covering and just watching this footage at the same time as you're all seeing it.
Announced just a couple of minutes ago that it's going to
Tawhid, who else?
a very
Tawhid, just a quick
statement.
pause. Who else could be doing this?
Yes.
Sorry, I'm trying to
the ability to do this.
Just turn down the volume of this video a little bit. I don't know. It is hard not to speculate about what's going to happen. But I guess since I'm such a prudent and careful journalist, maybe it's best not to get too wild in our speculation about whether this is going to really begin World War III in earnest or not. My instinct is to say that like that feels more likely right now than it has in quite some time. I mean, we've been talking for the last year about what Israel's intentions are with this. Are they trying to provoke a broader conflict, a regional war? And we've been saying over and over, yes. And, the U.S. has just kind of refused to fully involve themselves in having this kind of like, instead having this kind of like distance approach where they're funding and arming Israel and fully giving them diplomatic support, but kind of still having this sort of hand-wringing approach, talking about a ceasefire. We know that that's bullshit, and we know that they never cared about a ceasefire, but trying to maintain some kind of level of distance from this situation. And they've just been repeatedly escalating, pushing past all these red lines, murdering journalists, murdering families. They've been bombing Lebanon this entire time, but now actually like fully, seemingly preparing for this invasion of Lebanon, going after the Hezbollah leadership, going after the Hamas political leadership, even when they're trying to negotiate some kind of a deal. And so far, it's been like they've not been able to kind of like spark this broader conflict. And just with the last week with the events in Lebanon, this like pager terrorist attack that was designed to go after the Hezbollah leadership, and also, count however many civilians and healthcare workers and whoever else that were maimed and injured in that situation. Then assassinating Nasrallah a few days ago, and leveling several city blocks in the process, trying to like decapitate the Hezbollah leadership to prepare for some kind of invasion. And now it seems like we've been wondering where the line is. There was also a resistance attack on the ground where 6 Israelis were killed. I saw that. Yeah, there was like a shooting situation where multiple Israeli settlers were killed as well. We've been wondering for the last year, where's this line? What's the line they're going to finally cross that's going to provoke some kind of an actual response? Even when they took out the, Hamas commander in Iran, we're all wondering, when is this Iran counterattack going to come? And it didn't come. I think there was some sense on the part of Iran that they still believe that some kind of ceasefire was possible. And then this looks to be the response that kind of we've been waiting for or thinking about and wondering where this red line is. Well, it seems like the red line has been crossed. Now, I guess the question is this a situation where Iran's going to respond in the way that they kind of did earlier, where they announce ahead of time what it's going to be, and it's all done in a way to really try and not escalate the situation? Is this what that's going to be? I don't know. It's really hard to imagine if this is confirmed. I mean, according to Al Jazeera, if it's confirmed that these missiles are coming from Iran, it's hard to not imagine a scenario where this does not now give this kind of pretext for Israel to respond even more. We're going to be hearing all kinds of stuff from politicians today about their right to defend themselves.
8 p.m. in Tel Aviv, just past 8 p.m. in Tehran. First of all, you said that you saw missile salvos over your head, right? Flying over Jordan. Is that correct?
We're going to be hearing all kinds of stuff about their right to defend themselves. It's really, really hard not to imagine. Why is Iran being so belligerent to Israel? Just because they hate democracy? It's because it's purely motivated by anti-Semitism. That's it.
Into Israeli territory, and it's worth mentioning that some of those actually were seen in the skies of Jordan then as well. But here, really just remarkable scenes in the sky as these rockets and missiles were making their way across the Middle East. Thousands of
so they're coming from Iran. There's people in Iran apparently showing these missiles being fired. Yeah, I don't know. It's really hard not to speculate on what the response now is going to be. Like, who knows if any of these missiles are going to really do any much damage? We're seeing footage of them being intercepted by Iron Dome. Poor Israel's just been minding its own business for the last year, from Yemen all the way to Beirut. Exactly, just little old innocent victim Israel once again being bullied by its belligerent neighbors. Can't wait to hear the Democratic VP candidate to Israel propaganda the debate tonight. Exactly. We're going to have Walls and J.D. Vance getting in a confrontation to prove which one is more supportive of Israel than the other one.
Adversary or ally. They had also said just a couple of months ago, after Ismail Haniyeh was killed,
the damage is the hastening of the collapse of the Zionist society. I mean, that's a one thought to have, but it's impossible not to speculate about how this might really escalate even further. There's been people drooling, not only people in Israel, but the neocons in the United States. There's a whole faction of the foreign policy establishment that have been drooling to nuke Iran for the last several decades. And they've just been waiting for the pretext for it to happen. And this could very well be that. We've got this election coming up as well, and I feel like it's entirely possible that Donald Trump is going to start campaigning really hard on, like, we need to militarily invade Iran. That might become a central part of this election. And probably in order not to seem weak, Biden's going to be saying the exact same thing. Pelicans, thanks for the gifted sub. Yeah, John Bolton is creaming his pants right now.
I have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
The Israeli army had actually put some of them on display after they had retrieved them back in April to show the public exactly what kind of weaponry we're talking about here. So these are huge.
The offensive capability of Iran has, I think, been greatly exaggerated. They aren't capable of doing much of anything. Well, that remains to be seen. I know Hezbollah has a pretty large arsenal. But there's been this element of patience as well. But I think where their strength has always been is like being there to repel any kind of ground invasion. Holy shit, look at this footage. Being there to repel any kind of actual ground invasion, which does seem like it might be taking off.
For upwards of 10 minutes after the siren stops, because you simply do not know what will fall from the sky.
This is absolutely insane footage that we're seeing here. Israelis believe they've destroyed 50 to 70% of Hezbollah's rocket capabilities. I mean, who's to know, though? I mean, they constantly lie about all of this shit. Who's to, like, if they're making any of these claims, I think it should be probably in anyone's best interest to instantly mistrust or just straight up not believe it.
Still ongoing, saying that there are several impacts that have been made and explosions heard across the country, saying that rockets themselves, rocket impacts in Tel Aviv and shrapnel have also been reported in Tel Aviv and in the areas around the Dead Sea in the occupied West Bank. They're saying that they haven't reported any injuries yet, but that this is still an ongoing situation across the country. So they're trying to gather as much information as they can. But as you can imagine, this is an emergency. This is something that has the country scrambling, that has authorities scrambling, especially in Tel Aviv, where this rocket attack has been concentrated, and they were responding already to an emergency situation of an active shooter, where we understand now there have been several
Hello, Dick Penderin.
killed. So it's somewhat of a cluster throughout Tel Aviv as authorities are trying to assess the situation, but telling all.
Now they want their ground forces to move into Lebanon and entirely wipe out the Radwan forces, pushing everyone back to the Litani River, which coincidentally runs parallel to the northern point of the Golan Heights. Yeah, and they've as I mentioned earlier, they've started to send notifications to these people in these villages in southern Lebanon.
Rob to talk you through all this.
They're starting to send messages to these people in southern Lebanon saying, like, you have to leave.
Half an hour in the safe room. There's so many Israelis who paid with their lives, and there are soldiers now in southern Lebanon. Actually, what we are experiencing now is, it's hard to count how many frontiers.
White House briefing in 20 minutes? Man.
In Tel Aviv that, bypasses.
The IDF put their headquarters, a massive palace of steel and glass with nuclear bunkers and Haikira, right in the middle of Tel Aviv. Yeah, it's almost like they're using the people of Tel Aviv as human shields. Apparently, I've been told repeatedly this week that it's actually okay. Like when you level several city blocks to assassinate Nasrallah, apparently everyone around there, every civilian casualty, they're all pro-Hezbollah, so that makes it okay. Well, how many of these people in Tel Aviv right now are pro-IDF? Does that make it okay? I don't know. According to the people in my own mentions, I would say yes.
We were safe until now for the last year. In my neighborhood, this is actually the second time. The first time that we heard the siren was false. What are we showing me?
Akiva, can I jump in? Because you said something interesting, if you don't mind. You said we were safe until the last year. So of course, you're...
The IDF killed those people by being in Tel Aviv. And again, this is the Zionist logic. This is what they've been saying for the last year. Even when families are killed and babies and journalists, it's all justified, apparently.
Shimon Peres used to person has a hammer in his hand, a big hammer, he believes that every problem is
This really is just absolutely insane footage right now.
kind of government that we are blessed with, so-called. I don't think that they have an answer what they will do next.
I mean, I think watching this after the events of the last year, it's hard not to feel something, I think, about seeing this kind of footage. And I think it's almost equally hard not to feel a certain amount of fear for what this is going to mean and what the retaliation for this is going to be. Again, there's a lot of people in Israel and in the United States foreign policy establishment that have been waiting for a moment like this. Oh my goodness. They've been waiting for a moment like this for decades. U.S. going to announce another 20 years of high school graduates dying in the fucking desert. Real election clincher. God damn it. This is what I mean. I mean, this is going to be what the next month of this U.S. election is about. And I don't doubt that Donald Trump is going to go really hard on, like, we need to nuke Iran, or we need to invade Iran. We need war with Iran. There's going to be a lot of people that are riled up by that. And there's going to be a lot of people in the Democratic Party that are going to probably be pushing Joe Biden, as if he needs pushing, but pushing that administration to match them on that. Oh, and Risk Inverse, thanks for the gifted sub 3 minutes ago. Turn it to glass, they'll say again. I mean, remember John McCain saying about bombing Iran. October surprise on October 1st. This is, kind of seems to be, yeah, what we're looking at here.
I think that he wants to create a situation that the Israeli public, maybe even the American administration, and the president...
And again, like, we're going to hear all kinds of stuff about Iran's aggression, right, in the media. And I think, like, we're watching Al Jazeera now. I would like to start watching some Western media about this, to see the Western media analysis of this. Because we're going to hear, we'll say we need, yeah, Kamala's going to say we need to nuke Iran with a diverse military force, the most lethal fighting force. Remember what she said just a few weeks ago.
I believe that he doesn't want to leave a mark in history of what his responsibility to October 7th, what he did. This was the worst thing that happened to the Jewish people since the Holocaust.
So I would like to watch some, like, Western media coverage of this. We're going to be hearing all kinds of stuff about Iran's aggression. But, like, let's really look at the last couple of years. When Trump arbitrarily assassinated Soleimani, you know, which was what kicked off 2020, this insane decade, was Donald Trump openly provoking Iran by assassinating one of their top, most revered military generals, someone who had fought ISIS exactly the same as Nasrallah as well, who fought ISIS and fought Al-Qaeda. And what was Iran didn't respond. Like, it's just been, this whole decade so far has been this series of provocations. Trump leaving the Iran deal in the first place. The Iran deal was made in total good faith, negotiated. The Iran deal was made so that they could, like, get out from under these sanctions. One of the only good things the Obama administration did in a foreign policy sense. Trump gets out from under the Iran deal. Trump assassinates one of their top generals. Israel's just been completely out of control for years now. Say nothing of the last year, but just for years. You know?
One of the Iranian IRGC's top officials that was assassinated in the recent attacks in Beirut.
You know, you've got the Iranian consulate being attacked in Damascus. You've got top Hamas officials being assassinated in Iran, and with still no response, except funding these, except continuing to back groups like Hezbollah. So it's been years of the United States and Israel and the West provoking Iran, constantly provoking Iran,
to talk you through all this.
With
Thank
no.
you for your invaluable coverage.
K Chewy, thanks for the 16 months. With no real response. And today we're going to hear a whole lot of stuff about the aggressive Iran and Iran's This is these bloodthirsty boogeymen in the Middle East, when that's not the actual reality of what has happened. Bolton has to be so excited right now, going to just about every liberal news show, for sure. I'm sure MSNBC is clamoring to get him on there right now.
Tel Aviv under attack. Other parts of the occupied territories are under attack at the time being. They also said this many parts of occupied territories were under attack. 10 of ballistic missiles, according to the report, have been fired, and we are waiting for further details. But
everyone remembers Maverick John McCain singing "Bomb, Bomb, Bomb, Iran."
Conducted under the ratification of Iranian National Security Council, which
is this footage repeating?
had Mr. Ahmadian today that talked about the possibility of retaliation. He said
It just says latest pictures.
Iran, this is the resistant front and the entire resistant movement that has been engaged into this war. Therefore, we're not waiting for, I'm quoting him, single action. With that said, I think we will be waiting for more
I'd like to tune into some Western media coverage about this. Here's NBC.
Few weeks about it, trying to avert a regional war. Obviously, Iran has said things that suggest it doesn't want a regional war. How will that be measured in terms of the intensity of this attack, whether this becomes something bigger than what we're seeing now?
You can count on
so
me. You're
we
gonna have
are
good old
already
Rob
clearly
to talk
in a
us through all
regional
this.
war, and in many ways
Happy
we've been in a regional
75th
war
birthday
from the
to
beginning.
China, and
A year
happy
ago,
preemptive death anniversary to
Hamas
Israel.
launched its massacre from Gaza.
Genghis Khan, thanks for the 14 months, 25 months. Thank you, Genghis.
Knew from personal experience that firing rockets and missiles at Israel is often not very effective because Israel has such intense and robust missile defense system. So what Hamas did on October 7th was breach the barrier. It broke down through the fences around Gaza Strip and carried out close quarter attacks, atrocities, and carried out a massacre on an unprecedented scale in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. What is going on right now, however, is that as Israel wraps up the Gaza war at an enormous cost to the people of Gaza.
Are they wrapping it up, really?
Tension in the north here.
Is that what you call that? They're wrapping up the Gaza war? I don't know if that's the words that I would use to describe what's happening.
Attack to try and protect its allies, to try and protect itself, to try and protect its own image, because Iran's proxies are being wiped out one after the other. First, it lost Hamas, or has mostly lost Hamas. Now it is losing Hezbollah. Hezbollah is still robust. It still has tens of
This
thousands
isn't insane. They've
fighters.
lost Hamas and Hezbollah, like as if Israel's actions over the last year haven't created thousands of more people that are going to spend their entire lifetimes resisting and joining the next Hamas and the next Hezbollah. That is an insane thing to say. That they're wrapping up the Gaza war. They've almost eliminated Hamas and they were eliminating Hezbollah, as if they haven't created an entire new generation of people that are going to resist them for their entire lives. What an insane claim to make.
All right, Richard, we'll ask you to stand by. We need to go back to NBC News.
Yeah, is there a source for this claim?
Sanchez, Raf, you had to run into shelter there as the siren sounded. Everything okay?
Everything okay, Lester. So we just had the experience that many millions of people across Israel had, that the sirens went off at our position. We had a couple of seconds to run to the shelter here. I can tell you our team here are all safe. Now, Lester, what was striking is we have been somewhat observers, bystanders almost, of this Iranian missile barrage as it had appeared to target central Israel. We've been looking south, watching the sky illuminated. And then just, a couple moments ago, for the first time, an Iron Dome going off from just east of our position here near the Israel-Lebanon border. It went at a very sharp and low trajectory. I don't have any confirmation, but just based on the direction that interceptor was fired, it seems possible to me that rather than intercepting an Iranian missile, given that we just haven't seen any now for about 15 minutes, it seems possible to me that that Iron Dome was fired at something that was coming coming from the Lebanese border behind us. Again, that is not confirmed, but just based on the trajectory of the Iron Dome, it seems possible. And if that is the case, it is a
anything that attacks Israel is an Iranian proxy, including Marxists online. Yeah, and including these like student groups. These student groups protesting Israel and doing these student encampments at various universities across North America. They're all Iranian proxies as well. It's the only possible way anyone can ever say anything bad about Israel. It's the only way you can ever criticize Israel is if you're an Iranian proxy. It's the only possible explanation.
Is saying that Israel's airspace is closed. Flights are directed to find alternate routes outside of Israel. And Lester, that is a sign of how intense this barrage has been. Even on some of the most intense days when rockets were flying out of Gaza in large numbers, Israel prided itself on keeping the flights going in and out of Ben Gurion Airport. There is only one really major international airport in this country. And when it
Rob, are you an Iranian proxy? Absolutely not.
Cut off from the world. They go to enormous lengths to keep that airport open. But
I'm not even going to joke around about this climate right now.
To be potentially several hundred Iranian ballistic missiles. The airport is closed. The airspace is closed. It is not clear when it will reopen, but I think it is safe to assume that Israeli fighter jets remain in the skies above us in case there is a third wave of incoming Iranian missiles.
Preliminary statement issued by the IRGC in response to the assassination of martyr Ismail Haniyeh, martyr Syed Hassan Nasrallah, and martyr General Abbas Nilfushan. We've begun striking important military targets in the occupied Palestinian territories with dozens of rockets. If the Zionist regime responds to the operation, it will face violent attacks.
Too deeply engaged in all this.
Well, the United States and Israel have been allies for.
There's going to be a lot of people clamoring for a response to this.
We come to their defense, and we've said pretty clearly on a bipartisan basis across administrations, we've got Israel.
We'd have the horse police show up at your door. I don't know what they're called. No, that is what they're called. They're called the horse police. Have you heard any updates on Netanyahu being injured? I just don't. If we ever got a confirmation on that, I would talk about it. I would never believe the rumors of that until we saw actual confirmation.
And cruise missiles. And U.S. Patriot missile batteries, anti-missile batteries, are also activated undoubtedly across Iraq, Syria, Jordan, and other places in the Arabian Gulf to ensure that Israel and our allies...
Or count on me. That's right. Good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Stay sane, everyone. Less than 3.
On the eve of the Jewish high holidays, with our ally under attack, with United States having...
We're talking about the high holidays. Because that's why this is happening.
In the year from an Iranian attack. This is a big moment of consequence. And
yet another case of anti-Semitism rears its ugly head.
But we'll continue to provide intelligence. We'll continue to provide warning. We'll continue to provide capability, air defenses, missile defenses. I think the question you're asking...
Yeah, well, Dutch, we did see that. We talked a little bit about that.
Offensive strike against the Iranian...
I mean, none of this shit should be surprising.
We don't know. I think it's too early to tell. We've got to do the bomb damage assessment. We've got to understand...
I just got here. Did some of those get through the Iron Dome? It seems like...
What threats they still pose.
I think they're probably surveilling whatever damage there was right now. It seemed like a couple of them did just from the footage that we saw. It's really hard to speculate, though.
If they continue to threaten our allies, our partners, and our bases, we may very well get involved ourselves.
Yeah, and that leads to the question, what does retaliation look like if the Israelis decide to respond?
This is the retaliation. What does retaliation look like? This is literally the retaliation.
Well, they could put up their aircraft, their F-35s, their F-16s up over the skies.
Videos showing over a dozen hits, including an oil rig.
They could take out Iranian military assets. Israel might conclude, let's not waste the crisis. We've been attacked. The skies over Tel Aviv are full of ballistic missiles inbound. You see them landing right there on the beach.
We've been attacked. I mean, they've been bombing like 4 different countries.
As we speak,
they're bombing Syria. They're bombing Lebanon. They've attacked Iran. They've bombed Yemen. It's just in this framing is just absolutely crazy.
Israel's been launching these attacks against Hezbollah leadership. And they've been kind of waiting to see Hezbollah's response.
That sounds like what you're concluding. Yeah, don't waste an opportunity.
They killed Nasrallah, and nothing happened. They killed the next tier down. Nothing happened. They went after, as you referenced, Haniyeh in downtown Tehran, one of the masterminds.
What is this? Invasions aren't invasions, and
of October 7th.
Sorry, I missed what you
nothing
said.
happened. So Israel is feeling
I gotta open up
pretty
another
emboldened
window
that
here.
they can take out Iran's terrorist surrogates and proxies, and they may have to go directly after Iranian mainland targets as well.
They're just going to be forced to.
Jeremy, thank you. I'll ask you to hang
They're just going to be forced to now go after these mainland targets. It's not that they want to, you see.
Gabe, we understand the president has been observing this, and
It's not that they want to.
coordinating the American.
They're going to be forced to.
Situation room.
Yeah, that's right, Lester. We're just hearing from the White House. The president and the vice president are in the situation room right now, according to U.S. officials. And the
Invasions aren't invasions and retaliations aren't retaliations. The invasions are in self-defense, and the retaliations are unprovoked attacks.
Targeting Israel. Now, Lester, we had earlier heard from U.S. officials and the president a short time ago that the U.S. did consider.
Look what you're making me do. Bombs 47 hospitals. I mean, this is what it's been the last year.
There are so many questions here with what happens next and what will be the U.S. response.
The language is extremely real Orwell shit.
Back here, and if you can think, we are nearly a year to the 1 year anniversary of October 7th, and it was the day after October 7th that President Biden first went before the cameras and warned other countries in that region, whether it be Iranian proxies or Iran, not to turn this into a wider war. And here we are nearly 1 year later.
He warned them not to turn it into a wider war while giving Israel every single bomb and weapon that they wanted, allowing them to commit whatever crimes they wanted to commit, blow past whatever red line they wanted to blow past. But all these other countries have to show this restraint, though.
Also saying that they want to see a ceasefire here, but always emphasizing that Israel has the right.
So basically what I'm hearing is Israel's invasion force isn't an invasion force, and the missiles, which so far as I can tell don't target Israeli civilians, are targeting civilians. I guess we better start World War III. This is going to be the big question today, trio. This is going to be the big question. There's going to be folks absolutely clamoring for now Iran to just be totally annihilated. And will cooler heads prevail? And even saying those words, I feel ridiculous. Asking this question, will cooler heads prevail? Somehow I doubt that. Somehow I doubt that cooler heads are going to prevail in this situation. Oh, their manufacturing consent machine is going to be in overdrive. They're going to be slamming down the propaganda button tonight.
Richard, we've been watching these attacks coming, presumably.
They're going to be absolutely slamming the propaganda button.
From Lebanon, that could be indication that Hezbollah has joined this immediate fight.
It is very possible. We haven't seen any launches from this area where we are.
Joe's always had a cool head when it came to invading countries like Iraq, for example. Exactly. This is you got Joe Biden in there with for his foreign policy expertise. This man is a foreign policy expert with a lifetime of service.
Follows a ballistic pattern and falls to the sky. Generally, the rockets and some missiles, but mostly the rockets that Hezbollah fires are much flatter. They're much lower. They're much smaller. If a rocket might be the size of a flagpole, a ballistic.
What is Canada's take on everything? Just follow whatever the U.S. is doing? I think sometimes, little baby beef, what Canada's stance is like, we urge restraint, but still just like repeating all the same bullshit about Israel's right to defend itself. I mean, even Trudeau wrote about Nasrallah the other day. Oh, he killed civilians. He was a terrorist that killed civilians.
Lebanese territory, but it would not be surprising.
Like, even when they're assassinating, they're leveling city blocks, killing hundreds of people to assassinate one guy. Trudeau is saying, like, well, he deserved it. He was a terrorist who killed civilians. And by the way, we also need to urge restraint. All parties need to urge restraint. It's just a complete nonsensical, contradictory position.
To protect its reputation and protect its proxies, its allies. Partly.
Yeah, is Hezbollah going to get involved in this fight? Yeah, when Lebanon is being invaded, I think it's safe to assume that they will. Yeah.
We've seen 2 waves of attacks. We don't know that this is over, and no one does right now in Israel in a night in which they have seen a large-scale attack by Iranian forces coming in the form of ballistic missiles, as Richard described.
I'm interested to see the footage of the Israelis in their bomb shelters crying like this, too. This is what it's like to live in Israel. This is what we have to put up with, while completely ignoring everything that they've done over the last year and several decades as well. And pretending that just did not happen.
rockets are being intercepted from, whether these are landing on heavily populated areas. It is simply too soon to know. But I want to go back to Raf Sanchez, who has been with us since these projectiles started raining from the sky quite a while ago now. Raf?
Here's moments ago in Lebanon.
Lester, time becomes a slippery thing in moments like this, but I would say it has been about 20 minutes or so now since we were able to see any sign of Iranian ballistic missiles from our position in northern Israel. Speaking to colleagues who are in central Israel, in Tel Aviv, it does appear quiet there as well. But if there were two waves, there could be a third wave. I've just been texting with an Israeli military official. I asked, does it look like the attack is over? The official says, too early to say. But we are expecting the chief spokesman for the Israeli military...
3 minutes to White House briefing. I imagine they'll cover it on here.
Potentially any minute now.
We're gonna hear all kinds of stuff about this Iranian aggression, this unprovoked attack. And Israel's right. Obviously, Israel's going to have a right to defend itself against this unprovoked, aggressive attack.
What they officially say at this point. I can tell you, Lester, this has certainly felt like a far, far more intense attack than the one we saw in April. Just the sheer volume of missiles. They arrived so quickly. They seem to have set off the sirens all across this country, and we simply...
Worth pointing out as well, like, even if these missiles did cause some kind of damage, and according to the IRGC they're being fired at military targets, these are not 500-kilogram bombs like what Israel is dropping on people in tents, like designed to inflict maximum carnage on civilians, like what Israel's been doing for the last year and beyond. I think Iran does have that kind of capability. They do have like a actual arsenal that they can use. I don't think it doesn't seem to be like what's being used right now.
And the leadership of the Israeli military as they decide how...
Wasn't Iran holding a retaliation in its pocket from a few weeks ago? Yeah, I mean, that was the speculation weeks ago about this, which never really materialized, because I think there is still some hope that there could be some kind of diplomatic solution.
We are starting to get reaction from lawmakers. Lester, let me share a little bit of it with you. Senator Marco Rubio saying large-scale, not symbolic missile attack from Iranian regime against Israel. A large-scale Israeli retaliatory response inside Iran is certain to follow.
Yeah, it's certain to follow.
Because Senator Rubio is essentially making the point, and Courtney spoke to this earlier, that he believes that any response should come from Israel. A different message coming from Senator Lindsey Graham, known for being hawkish on foreign policy. He says this is a moment of choosing for the free world regarding Iran. The Ayatollah and Iranian regime are religious Nazis who want to destroy the state of Israel. Their words, not mine. They want to purify Islam and attack the United States. Again, their words, not mine. The missile attack...
Once Iran starts flattening 10-story apartment buildings and hospitals, we can start to discuss whether or not to clutch one's pearls. Until then, the shit's staying in my jewelry case. I think it's a pretty reasonable take.
Starting with Iran's ability to refine oil. That's significant, Lester, that final sentence, because Senator...
Yeah, it is absolutely psychotic.
Iran escalates this conflict in the Middle East, that the United States should consider a coordinated attack against Iran's oil.
We're really on the brink right now, folks. I feel like we felt like we were on the brink for years, as I've been talking about. But it really feels like we're on the brink even more so than we have been for quite some time.
Marco Rubio is choosing their words very carefully. So that clearly is a dividing line in the Republican Party. What will the candidates say about this? Again, we're just...
Yeah, of course, Joey Stalin and Lindsey Graham talking about these Islamic Nazis while he openly hangs out with Nazis and promises to give them whatever weapons they need as long as they're killing Russians.
That more needs to be done, that the United States should coordinate a response with Israel.
This is the question. Like, we know there's appetite in Israel to attack Iran.
The dividing line is going to be, as it relates
there's a large faction in the intelligence community and the military-industrial complex that wants to attack Iran as well. Is this the thing that's going to give them the excuse that they need to finally do this?
Who would be the better commander-in-chief? But this is a commander-in-chief moment. This is a moment of testing for each of these candidates.
Is Biden going to urge restraint?
Tonight on the debate stage, Lester.
You know, if Biden urges restraint and Donald Trump says we need to nuke Iran, that's going to be the central question of the next couple of weeks. And there's going to be a big appetite to go in the latter direction. And is Biden even going to urge restraint? Lily from the house watching with a glass of wine. Well, you might as well. When we feel like even more on Lily, when we feel even more on the brink of World War III than we have been over the last couple of years, you might as well just enjoy yourself.
Is this a symbol that they're being very careful, not wanting to escalate this any farther?
Well, I think they crossed that Rubicon about an hour ago, and there will be, this is an escalation, and there will be a response. But Iran, according to its mission at the United Nations...
So why is nothing Israel does ever an escalation? Oh, now this is an escalation that needs a response, but nothing that Israel does ever does require a response. It's so psychotic the way we do this.
Which involved targeting Iranian nationals.
Putin had a special security meeting last night while the Russian diplomat talked to his Iranian counterpart in Tehran.
Carried out.
Jesus.
Iran is saying, for now, that this was a response, that it was a legal and rational and legitimate.
Oh, Mercurial Shroom. This is what I mentioned earlier. I remember freaking out about going to war with Iran in 2020.
You can count on me. You're gonna have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
I am trying. You are.
Freaking out when Soleimani was assassinated. This feels way worse. And this is what we're going to be talking about when we hear about like Iran's aggression. Right? This unprovoked attack. It's what I was saying earlier. There's been now years of provocations against Iran, which like none of these responses are ever warranted, you know? And it's always, oh, this is now an escalation. But nothing that we do or what Israel does ever counts as being an escalation. We assassinate their generals. We bomb their leadership in Damascus. As carrying out assassinations in Tehran. It's just been like this multiple years now, to set aside the last couple of decades of the West, the United States and Israel and its allies, constantly provoking Iran and never really having any kind of retaliation. And now this happens and it's like, oh, the retaliation has come, and obviously this is an escalation and is going to require a response. And Duke, thank you for the
You've
3
just
months.
become an elite member of the Friendship Triangle.
4 months. Thank you, Duke. And no context, Gus. Thanks for the 5 gifted subs. That's very kind of you. I appreciate it.
Of missile impacts in Israel. They are saying that there are 2 light injuries reported as a result of shrapnel interceptions.
Thanks a lot, Gus.
Shrapnel falling.
I read that's really cool. I appreciate it a lot.
Injured in Tel Aviv, they are saying. They're also saying there are a number of minor injuries where people fell or hurt themselves in the process of running to the shelters.
Okay, minor injuries when people fell running to bomb shelters.
Are saying no reports of fatalities and no reports of injuries as a direct result of missile impacts.
So no one injured in these missiles. A few people have gotten little scrapes and bruises running to bomb shelters. And this is the provocation that's going to require this escalation. Many cases of boo-boos have happened.
But the initial report at this time,
multiple boo-boos have been reported.
As a result of these missiles, and
again, this is Israel who's dropping 500-kilogram bombs on apartment complexes and hospitals and schools. And we're going to be talking about this retaliation that needs to happen.
Large-scale Iranian missile attack in just 6 months. Lester.
Okay, Raph, thank you. Let me go to our Pentagon correspondent. I'm sorry, Raph, you hearing something there?
Lester, we heard an explosion. There has been outgoing artillery fire from around here. That did not sound like it. That seemed like an interception. I didn't see anything. I'm looking at my crew here. Neither of them are seeing anything either. Again, we're just about 2 miles from the Lebanese border, so it is possible in these extraordinary days we are seeing here in the Middle East that that explosion you just heard may have nothing to do with the Iranian ballistic missile attack and may instead be something to do with incoming fire, mortars, rockets coming from Lebanon. The sirens are not going off here. That did sound close. but it may very well have been on the other side of that mountain ridge which separates Israel from southern Lebanon here. Lester.
Okay, Raph, thanks for clearing that up. Let's go to our Pentagon correspondent, Courtney Cubey. Courtney, is the U.S. now detailing its level of
That's a loud keyboard.
defending Israel tonight?
Sorry, it's because the mic is right here and it's like picking up the keyboard sounds. And I'm furiously typing.
According to a defense official, that the U.S. military
I stopped watching North America's Lying Reporters. I mean, I think that's a smart thing to do, is to stop watching the Lying Reporters, but I actually think it's can be really valuable to watch Western media coverage of these to understand the ways that, like, it tries to influence people's perceptions and manufacture consent for certain things. We don't and we shouldn't believe a word that these fucking people say, obviously. But I do think watching this kind of Western coverage can be really, really valuable.
That they can help to intercept it. Israel has some of those capabilities as well, but the U.S. would likely have helped with that, the detection of the missiles, and then in the shooting.
Why are reporters talking about that Gatling gun? Oh, it's the keyboard. I like to observe the depth of the lies. Exactly.
In the region that have the ability to intercept a missile as it's coming in. They also have air defense systems that are landing.
So again, like, let's keep in mind now that, like, when we hear all this, you're going to see a briefing from the White House. There's all going to be all kinds of folks in Israel and in the United States government talking about responding to Iran now that this has happened. No one was killed in these missile strikes. These missile strikes on Israel, where they've just been leveling apartment complexes and schools and hospitals, dropping 500-kilogram bombs on people in tents, killing little kids, babies.
Shade to all the weirdos that told me Iran would never do this.
Was involved in knocking some of those down. Now, we heard from the White House earlier.
And we're going to be hearing all about the need to respond to this provocation, in which no one was killed, and we had a few scrapes and cuts and boo-boos. Sam, thank you for 32 months of Tier 3. I appreciate it, Sam. Thank you.
Back in April, you'll recall, Lester.
It is wild how far they'll go to protect this genocide. Like, it's as we've talked about many times, it's more extreme than Ronald Reagan.
Knocking down many of those projectiles at that time, and now the U.S. only has more assets in the region able to do that.
Yeah, this is the new October 7th. We've got a few scrapes and cuts. We got a few skinned knees. This is the worst thing that's ever happened.
Israel. Both sides, Iran, Israel, saying that they're not seeing anything further. Iran saying that it has concluded its attacks tonight. That word coming short time ago from their UN mission here in New York. Let me bring in Jeremy Bash now, a former chief of staff at the CIA and the Pentagon. Give us the 35,000-foot view.
My kids ain't going to be going to war. No, and, like, if you are someone that feels like you're at risk to go to war, even if you're in the military, I would encourage you to not go.
The skies of Tel Aviv and Israel's air defense.
You know, what's the worst that's going to happen if they ever tell you got to go and fight in Iran now? Just don't fucking go.
We don't have any reports of fatalities
Don't go.
or serious casualties on the ground. There was a terrorist attack in the southern part of Tel Aviv in Jaffa earlier tonight. There's several dead reported from Israeli police. Israelis have spent the evening.
Now let's talk to the CIA guy.
Of course, there continues to be other fire from Houthis.
I'm going to go ahead and condemn Iran for these attacks. It's China's birthday. We should be watching videos of communist fireworks and not this. Exactly. This is the real distraction.
By Iran and its surrogates and proxies. Now, again, Israel has some decision space here. If there were no serious fatalities or casualties, it can kind of measure its response if it chooses to, or it could maybe determine that it doesn't want to waste the crisis and actually launch a much more significant strike on Iran's mainland. The U.S. participated probably with another.
I mean, it just seems like, even though it's an escalation compared to their last rocket barrage, Iran's, from a few months ago, this does seem to be designed to not lead to an escalation. But, like, will that be the result? That's what we're all waiting to find out now. Will that be the result?
To open a northern front against Israel. They've unleashed Hezbollah. You've seen Israel respond.
I sense a line emerging. Don't waste the crisis. There's going to be a lot of people repeating this.
Has launched missile attacks against our ally Israel.
It's sort of like how literally every IDF soldier had the option to just go to country club jail for a maximum of 2 years instead. Exactly. Yeah.
No serious injuries related to anything that's
a wasted crisis of a few boo-boos. We've had multiple boo-boos happening.
Sanchez, let me turn back to you. We understand there was violence that may or may not be linked to all this in Tel Aviv tonight.
Yeah, Lester. So in those anxious hours before the Israeli military, or excuse me, after the Israeli military spokesman told the public here that an attack was imminent, and before the attack actually got underway, there was a shooting in the Jaffa area that's south of downtown Tel Aviv. And Israeli police are saying at least 4 civilians were killed by at least 2 gunmen who appear to have opened fire on the light rail in southern Tel Aviv. Now, U.S. officials are saying the overall death toll may be higher still, may be closer to
I was trying to type softly there.
While it appears, according to the Israeli military,
I think Iran has been thoroughly infiltrated by Mossad, and this is just them punching the bomb Iran card. I mean, I've seen a lot of speculation about that. Well, with the bombing in Tehran that happened, with this attack on Nasrallah, it does seem like
was armed with some kind of
that is a serious possibility that they have been infiltrated by somebody.
On the platform after disembarking, Israeli police are saying both of the suspects are dead. There are a number of wounded people. Their conditions are unclear. So while it may be that Israel has got through this night without anyone killed as a result.
What's with the new locale? There's no new locale. This is the same place I'm always streaming from. You're mistaken.
In Israel tonight. And it just goes to show you, Lester, just the unbelievably heightened tensions all across the Middle East. We do not know the motivation of these shooters at this point, but it is hard to believe that it is totally unrelated to the massive loss of life that we have been seeing all across the region these last 11 months. Lester.
Okay, Raph, thanks. Let's go back to the other side of the border, inside Lebanon. Richard Engel, our chief foreign correspondent. Richard, there's a story being written here tonight about the future relations of
Ahmadinejad spoke with CNN Turkey and had some wild bombshells regarding Mossad and Israel. Oh yeah, that seems interesting. Who's responsible for that mass loss of life? It's just a mass loss of life that's happened. It just happened. It's just like a part of nature. It's just a loss of life.
That doesn't involve the Iranian government, that doesn't involve its proxies, that doesn't involve what is...
The leader of the Iranian group to suss out Mossad was himself a Mossad agent. Jesus.
And, that's the narrative that Prime Minister Netanyahu is saying about the future of the Middle East. But from the narrative inside Israel is also changing right now. A year ago, almost exactly a year ago, Israel suffered a tremendous intelligence catastrophe and a total security collapse on October 7th. Its deterrent capacity was shattered.
Yeah, it is like a weather event. And then the actual weather events that are leading to loss of life, we just don't talk about those.
A country like Israel, which has such robust defenses, could have suffered and not foreseen the Hamas atrocity of October 7th. With these 2 missile attacks launched by Iran, both of them shut down entirely. And if the reporting that Raf is getting holds up, the fact that not a single fatality was caused by all of this.
An intelligence failure, intelligence catastrophe.
To allowing Israel to
talk about not wasting a crisis.
To reestablish its deterrence, to reestablish its security reputation across this entire region.
Didn't Iran just say there's going to be another wave of missiles? I'm not sure.
Minister Netanyahu, and is something that is valuable.
Hurricanes destroy the south, another $50 billion for Israel. By the way, there's a $50 billion shortfall in our hurricane relief.
Now, I keep saying, what will happen next? I do not suspect that this will go like it did in April, unchallenged. In April, there was a symbolic response from Israel. We will see tonight. There will be many diplomatic calls. There will be many calls to Israel. But we will see if Israel again responds in such a symbolic way as it did in April, or if this is a start of a new chapter, perhaps a new chapter leading in the direction of what Prime Minister Netanyahu has been describing.
Try to contain your excitement, sir.
Have the threats posed by...
And remember, our thoughts and prayers are with all the Israeli citizens that suffered boo-boos and scraped knees in this vicious assault that happened today.
You are in South Lebanon. We haven't really talked much about the events of the last couple of
Yeah, I thought kind of the same thing, Dakadoon. When there was this news about a possible Iranian strike today, it's like, are they just like creating the conditions to preemptively attack?
Yes, it would be. So what Israel has...
Rob, at least there's cops keeping order by protecting grocery chains. diapers, baby formula, food, water. Yeah, exactly. That's where the... I mean, you don't need to speculate about what the climate crisis is going to look like, right? We see what it's going to look like. It's border concentration camps and it's jackbooted thugs preventing people from getting fucking groceries when they're cut off from all kinds of supplies and electricity and all this stuff.
Across the border where I am in Lebanon, this is it is a country. It has an airport that is still functioning. It has an open border, more or less, with Syria. There have been many refugees who've been going into Syria. But what Israel has declared is it wants to eliminate Hezbollah, at least from southern Lebanon, to push Hezbollah back from the Israeli border to the Litani River. We are just south of the Litani River, so yes, we're in that area that would be the buffer zone. And Israel has been attacking Hezbollah systematically using high tech, using intelligence, doing that sabotage attack, blowing up first Hezbollah's pager system. The reason Hezbollah used pagers was so that they could avoid iPhones. They tried to use low-tech technology. Israel figured it out, infiltrated the shipments, put bombs in the pagers, blew them up. Then did the same thing with the walkie-talkies. Again, an intelligence coup. What Israel wants to do now is go after the fighters themselves. They've taken out the communication system. They've taken out much of the leadership. But the army of Hezbollah, the fighters of Hezbollah still remain. Israel pushed into southern Lebanon yesterday, just a few hundred, staying quite close to the border. But for now, it doesn't seem that Hezbollah has engaged. Hezbollah didn't want to confront Israeli troops head on, perhaps trying to save their numbers, perhaps now feeling a leadership crisis. They didn't take the bait of going after Israel when Israel is going in with so much force. They're holding back, at least for now.
Yeah, this guy doesn't seem super objective at all, no.
But this is still more or less day one of Israel's ground war into Lebanon.
Okay, Richard, thank you. Let me go to our senior White House correspondent, Gabe Gutierrez.
It's day one of Israel's ground war into Lebanon when there's still no regional conflict, though. Don't worry about that, folks.
For the time being.
Well, we don't have any immediate reaction in the last few minutes, Lester, to these recent developments and the comments from Iran. But what we can tell you, as we reported earlier, the president and the vice president were in the Situation Room as of just a short time ago, monitoring these developments. And Lester, this is a huge test of President Biden's foreign policy. A lot of questions will be raised about how much leverage the president has.
Al-Mayadeen has people on the border, and they have said Israel has yet to actually enter.
Few months. Now, the Biden administration has repeatedly
I wonder what they're waiting for. They decapitated the Hezbollah leadership. Should be no problem.
His discussions with Prime Minister Netanyahu that civilian casualties have been limited down in Gaza. It will be a very difficult couple of days for the Biden administration to now see what happens next with Israel and how it can prevent this from escalating even further. Now, we just heard from the White House a short time ago that the president did direct U.S. resources to help defend the skies over Israel. There's a White House briefing that was scheduled for this afternoon that has just been pushed back, obviously, as these developments are unfolding. We hope to get more information from
the caption should say Israel escalating war in Middle East. Yeah, I mean, that is what's happening.
Exactly the extent of
I think we do all understand that.
This afternoon as it helped defend Israel against this Iranian attack. And again, Lester, as far as we know, the president and the vice president with their national security team are continuing to monitor this from the Situation Room. As Kristen mentioned earlier, Lester, this is sure to become a major issue in the campaign. Just a few moments ago, we have had former President Trump weigh in on all this, saying, quote, "This war was totally preventable. It should never have happened." So again, something that was sure to be a focus tonight during the vice presidential debate, Lester.
All right.
During the vice presidential debate, when they all clamor over each other to talk about how loyal to Israel they both are.
Debate tonight was foreign policy going prior to
Sir, I'm much more loyal and
I think that foreign policy
respectful towards Israel than my opponent.
Part of the debate, even if this hadn't happened, simply because the Middle East has been in this state, quite frankly, for days, waiting to see if Iran would retaliate. And now here we are with this escalation. And so, as Gabe just laid out, the line of attack from
this is the escalation.
Likely from Senator J.D. Vance is going.
This is the escalation.
If he were in office, of course.
This is the escalation that needs
of that.
a retaliation.
That anything would be different, but that's the line of attack that we are hearing from former President Trump. And of course, it does come when you talk to U.S.
This is the escalation when the country that's been bombing hospitals and schools and people sleeping in tents with 500-kilogram bombs has rockets fired at it, and then some of their citizens get scraped knees. That's an escalation.
Better deal. That never happened. So there are going to be questions for both of these candidates, and of course, J.D. Vance, Governor Walz will be making the case tonight for each of the candidates at the top of the ticket.
They just want half of Lebanon. It's no biggie. Well, listen, it is no biggie because God promised it to them. So that's a reason that they should be allowed to do that.
Was dragging down his support in some key areas like the state of Michigan, for example. They have wanted to see a ceasefire. They argue that the death toll in Gaza is simply too high, that this is a humanitarian crisis. So incredibly difficult questions now, Lester, to be answered on that debate stage tonight and on the campaign trail.
All right, Kristen, you'll be joining us for our coverage of the debate later this evening, and we'll talk more about this. Let's bring in NBC's Aaron McLaughlin in Jerusalem. Aaron, we knew you had to take shelter there with your team at some point. Now that you're out and about, any signs of damage or impact in Jerusalem where you are?
Well, not here in Jerusalem, Lester. An uneasy calm has settled over this city. It was around 6:30 p.m. I was actually live.
I imagine if there's some kind of press briefing
that had unfolded according to Israeli officials in Jaffa.
it's going to be carried here, right? I imagine so.
And injuring 2 terrorists killed. We were just getting those details in when suddenly we heard the sirens sound here in Jerusalem, and then reports of sirens across Israel. And when we looked up, we could see the lights of Israel's interceptor missiles from the Iron Dome streaking across the sky. That was followed by a series of explosions. Before we moved to shelter, we could hear
God promised it to them as a lie Zionists tell themselves, those that don't know. There's tons of things I disagree with regarding Orthodox Jewish groups, but they're totally right about Palestine.
The size of the account.
And this continued for
Those who use the Bible to support Israel need to differentiate between God's promise and Balfour Promise, because the occupation is the result of a promise given to the Israelis by Lord Balfour, and not by God. Archbishop Theodosios.
Husker says Hashem forbids us Jews from establishing any state in the region until the return of the Messiah.
Respond to this attack from Iran. They are also
and thank you, Dimitri, for the 200 bits.
Still. Lester.
Okay, Aaron, glad you guys are safe. Let me go back to Pentagon correspondent Courtney Kube. Courtney, we've been talking about the level of U.S. military involvement in intercepting some of these missiles. We were able to see with our own eyes the video of some of these intercepts, but I understand these may have extended even farther from the camera's view.
Yeah, so remember where these missiles are coming from. Most of them, if not all of them, coming from Iran, probably even Western Iran. So just think about the map here. They would have flown over a number of different countries where the U.S. and allies have some missile defense and air defense systems. Now, that's one of the big questions that we're trying to get answered here is, were there some of these land-based systems like Patriot interceptors in some of these countries? Was the U.S. actually...
I'm seeing as well an Iranian missile has targeted the Israeli forces.
We even got to our cameras. What we're seeing, what we've been watching here...
Netzarim corridor inside Gaza just now.
Intercepted and taken down. Well, it's possible, like we saw in April, some of them didn't even make them that far. Now, remember, Lester, Iran has an enormous stockpile of ballistic and cruise missiles that they already have inherent.
There's a lot of footage happening right now that's not being shown right now. We can speculate about maybe why that is, but let's look at some of this. So this is just a few moments ago. Iranian missile targeted the Israeli forces in Netzarim corridor inside Gaza. 4 minutes ago, almost all. So let's scroll back here a couple minutes ago. Yeah, there's some crazy footage here because we're seeing footage of. Someone pointed this out a few moments ago. We saw footage of, like, in Tel Aviv, but there's these Israeli military bases where there's a lot more damage that seems like it's been done, and probably where they won't report casualty numbers to the same extent as well. That was 35 minutes ago posted. The Iranian hypersonic missiles hit the Nevatim air base in the Negev. Iraqi sources and missile strikes the U.S. Ain al-Assad air base in western Iraq. For the first time, more missiles hit their targets than intercepted. Hypersonic is Israel's weakness. Another recording shows Iranian hypersonic missiles striking Nevatim air base in the Negev.
נפילות אחי, נפילות של החיים בנבטים. נפילות בנבטים אחי. נפילות קשות בנבטים, שומע? וואו, 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 וואו. וואו!
That is crazy.
הכל נופל לנבטים, אני אומר לך מתקפה אחת החזקות. אימאלה, 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 זהו, למקלט. נפילות אחי, נפילות של החיים בנבטים. נפילות...
Massive explosions reported. This is 21 minutes ago. Interesting, none of this was shown on NBC. I think that's kind of an interesting wrinkle here. Massive explosions reported following dozens of Iranian missiles striking Israeli military bases. But not much going on. It's a slow news day, kill panic. Additional recordings of Iranian hypersonic missiles hitting Israeli military bases. Very interesting that this is not being shown on NBC. This is all like 30 minutes ago. This is interesting as well. The Israeli army spokesperson has requested settlers not to film the locations where Iranian missiles have landed. Another recording shows Iranian hypersonic missiles striking Nevatim air base in the Negev. Just casually driving through a missile strike is wild. Yes, it is. Hey, Marina. Man, that is crazy. Does this mean Israel's going to be like on April, downplay weak retaliation? This is the central question. Adult diaper stock's about to rise. Well, we saw there was a number of scraped knees and little cuts and bruises that happened as a result of this. This is the central question. Is this going to be another weak response? We know that there's going to be people salivating for a very real response. People in Israel and people in the United States-based like national security establishment and the United States government. And we're going to see today which of these factions is able to come out ahead. Also just in from Iraqi resistance, if the U.S. intervenes against Iran or if the Zionist enemy uses Iraqi airspace, we'll target U.S. bases. Man, it just feels so much closer than ever to spiraling out of control.
Andrew Mitchell and myself were part of an off-camera meeting with the Iranian president last week. Clearly, it didn't sound like a guy who wanted a global war over this.
Well, Iran has been saying that for a long time, and Iran has been trying to butter both sides of the bread. It wants to support Hamas. It wants to support the Palestinians. It wants to be seen as...
I do remember when Brian Williams quoted Leonard Cohen. I'm guided by the beauty of our weapons. Yeah, that was the one time Trump was presidential,
but it doesn't want to,
according to all these liberal newscasters.
A direct war with Israel. That's why it's been fighting primarily through its proxies. And Iran has proxies in 5 countries. And the question is, will this, by having the ballistic missiles launched directly from Iran, change that calculation?
All right. Richard Engel, thanks. That concludes this NBC News special report. More ahead on our streaming network, NBC News Now, online at NBCnews.com, and we'll have a lot more when I see you tonight for NBC Nightly News. I'm Lester Holt in New York. Thank you for watching, and good day.
Okay. You're not a journalist. You know this. No, I know.
Second, military and political analyst from Brussels, but I want to recap what's happening. So it's 9 o'clock in Tel Aviv, 9 o'clock in Beirut, just past 9 o'clock in Tehran. What you're seeing is what happened just over an hour ago. Iran launched an attack.
I just heard a jet scramble above my house. Oh, good. Multiple.
At Israel. And
good.
The Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps.
Middle East conflagration will not get in the way of afternoon programming.
Public announcement and confirmed that they were claiming this attack. They were behind.
The best way, if you're American, to respond to this is go to the mall, folks. Go to the mall.
Killing of Hassan Nasrallah, the chief of Hezbollah.
I'll be right back. All right, folks. Just give me a sec.
Killing of Ismail Haniyeh, the then leader of Hamas, while he was in Tehran. That was in late June, June 31st. So this has been the first stage, they said, of their response. And they also warned Israel not to respond to that. Let's bring in, I'm told we're bringing in Akiva Eldar, a political analyst who are joining us from Tel Aviv. Akiva, it's good to be back with you. It looks like, based on what I'm seeing, it looks like you've changed location. You're not in your safe room anymore.
Well, I follow the orders of my government. And when the Home Front Command tells us that it's clear, we can go back. I can go back to from where I usually talk to you. I'm happy to do that. But at the same time, you know, I keep mineral water in the safe room and a flashlight and whatever is needed. And when I look out of the window, there is nobody in the streets. You can hardly see any cars. We are not back to normal. The good news is I'm expecting my relative to come back from Europe tomorrow, and they reopened the airspace. So maybe we will be able to celebrate the new year together with other members of our families.
Okay, all airports had been shut down, but now you're telling us that they're reopened. People are out of their safe rooms, and that security posture has been lifted by the Israeli military. Are they saying that the attack is over just for now, or are they saying that the attack is over?
Just for now. It's not over yet. And I believe it's a kind of who has the last word. It's about national dignity. Who is a bigger Rambo or Popeye? The Israeli right-wing government cannot afford to let the Iranians have the last word. How did they dare attack Tel Aviv, even Jerusalem, our capital? We have to maintain our deterrence that we lost in October 7th. And today, you know, Netanyahu is the happiest man on earth since who remembers the captives? Who remembers the blunder with more than 1,600 Israeli civilians killed just a year ago? You know, we are looking at what was a nightmare, a regional war that will involve Iran directly, you know, attacking Israel and Israel retaliating. And so the nightmare is becoming a vision.
You say the nightmare is becoming reality. Do you know what your prime minister, I'm not implying by that you support him, but he is your prime minister. Do you know what he wants to do? Do you know where he is taking your country?
I know for sure what he doesn't want to do. He doesn't want to turn the military victory, and I think what Israel did in Lebanon will be studied in cadet schools, all over military cadet schools everywhere in the next century. But having said that, there is a consensus among Israeli experts, strategists, that if you don't turn this victory into some political victory, meaning getting down to the negotiating table, having the Americans facilitate with the Saudis and other members of the Arab countries to isolate the extremists. And since Israel has returned its deterrence power, let's do something with it. And this is, you know, Ehud Barak said that Yasser Arafat, he said it back in 2000, that Yasser Arafat is not a partner. I saw headlines today in Haaretz, in an op-ed, that there is no partner on our side.
All right, Akiva Eldar, thank you very much for sharing, first of all, what that was like when you were in the safe room. We spoke to you an hour ago, and for joining us again this hour. We appreciate your time.
Jordan, I feel much better now.
Jordan and Iraq have also closed their airspace, and these were the scenes in Jordan's capital, Amman, where Al Jazeera's team witnessed Iranian missiles flying overhead. So this would have been about an hour ago. Jordan's army has urged people to remain indoors. So again, those missiles were the missiles fired by Iran, flying over and into Jordanian airspace, and those are ultimately the missiles that we see here landing or being intercepted over the skies of Tel Aviv. Hamda Salhout is in Jordan's capital, Amman, because the Israeli government has banned Al Jazeera from reporting within Israel. Hamda, I have a guest maybe 5 minutes ago, no later than 5 minutes ago, who told me he heard reports, but I don't know what the source is, of more missiles flying over the or through Jordanian airspace. Have you seen or heard anything?
Well, after that initial Iranian attack, there has been nothing in the skies over Jordan, as the army has said the incident is over. But of course, the Jordanian airspace is still closed. But when it comes to projectiles flying in the sky, there has been no confirmation at all from Jordanian authorities about anything after the incident that had taken place nearly an hour ago. Cyril.
Okay. As regards Israeli official comments, we heard Daniel Hagari, the Israeli military spokesman, a short while ago. What did he say?
Daniel Hagari, the Army spokesperson, giving an update, essentially saying that people can now emerge from their safe rooms an hour basically after the attack had taken place, saying that there have been some hits throughout Israel, but they're still assessing the damage. He also said that this will not go unanswered, that Israel is surely going to respond. And it's worth mentioning what we saw back in April, just to draw some parallels here, to give the viewers some context, when Iran had launched nearly 350 cruise missiles, ballistic missiles, and drones to Israel. There was an Israeli response nearly 7 days later. While it was kind of muted because there was pressure from the United States to the Israelis not to escalate the situation further, this is surely a different beast. It's also important to note that Israel had this intelligence from American counterparts about a pending attack, but the Israelis had said that they didn't have any information about a preparation being made by Iran, that Israeli Air Force planes were patrolling all over the Middle East and their intelligence didn't find anything yet, but nonetheless that they were prepared due to their air defenses. This is an air defense system that is ironclad, which is why the casualty rates, whenever we see rockets launched from anywhere to Israel, the casualties are so low because you have an air defense system that is threefold. You have the Iron Dome missile defense system for short-range rockets, the Arrow, and the David Sling for longer-range projectiles, which were probably dispatched during this latest rocket fire from Iran. But some of the images that we were seeing on our screens, and I was listening in on our coverage, it's important to note that these are interceptors that are meeting with the Iranian missiles in the sky and then falling. The explosions you see are from the fires that are being lit up, because when one projectile is hit with another in the air, it is going to spark, and when it lands, it's going to spark as well. You can tell air defenses from a distance. You could tell what they look like if you've been on the ground covering this conflict, looking at missiles and other air defense interceptors being fired in Israel. But there have been hits throughout Israel. There have been a lot of shrapnel as well that has fallen, and we're also getting reports in the occupied West Bank of a lot of shrapnel that has fallen and in fact injured a Palestinian there.
Okay, Hamda Salhout reporting from Amman in Jordan. Thank you very much. Let's bring in Elijah Manier, military and political analyst, joining us from Brussels. Elijah, your take on what you've seen.
We've seen the sky over Israel eliminated and Iran escalated to de-escalate. The reason why Iran is hitting Israel, it says not only because of its guest that Ismail Haniyeh was hit and the pride of the nation when the violation of Iran's sovereignty was carried out by Israel, but also for two other reasons: for the assassination of Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah, the head of Hezbollah, because the head of Hezbollah in reality is Sayyid Ali Khamenei. He is the Wali al-Faqih, and he is the leader of the revolution, and he is the leader ideologically of Hezbollah. And the third point was raised. It was the revenge for General Abbas Nel-Furushan, who is the head of the IRGC in Lebanon. So the person who gave the order is, per the Article 110 of the Iranian Constitution, Sayyid Ali Khamenei, who has the control over the all armed forces, and he has the right to declare war on any other country. Therefore, what we have seen here, first of all, it's spoiling Benjamin Netanyahu's morale, because these missiles went over Iraq.
Well, Elijah,
Syria.
pause. I just spoke to multiple guests from Israel. It does not appear to be spoiling their morale at all. They see this as a success, as a victory, because there are no casualties to be reported at this hour, and this was the attack, and now it's behind them.
Well, if I may finish only the sentence, it is the boost of the morale of Iraq, Syria, and Lebanon, the allies of Iran. It is not concerning Israel, because these people have been hit in their morale when Israel sabotaged the pager, wounding 3,000 out of 150,000, and there were victory after victory morally over Hezbollah and the axis of the resistance. By watching these missiles crossing over their country, eliminating the sky over Israel, that gave back the morale to these people, regardless of the damage that these have inflicted or did not inflict on Israel. What's happening in Israel and how these missiles hit the objective has become irrelevant.
Israel clearly indicating that they're not owned, they're not mad, and they're actually laughing.
All these commanders in Lebanon and the sabotage operation and ending it by killing Sayyid Nasrallah. And
it looks like these strikes were legit strategic and meant to just strike their airbase. That seems to be the exact situation. And again, it's going to be interesting watching this get framed as this is the escalation.
The future leader
you know,
of the Middle East who's going to punish anyone that attacks.
A legit, measured response that attacks their military installations.
Which is, you know, It's kind of a
This
strange
unprovoked
quote, but
assault.
we've heard several times in the last few days, and really the first time we
That simultaneously means nothing to us and is also the worst thing that's ever happened.
Lebanon against Hezbollah. The idea of escalate to de-escalate is essentially show your military muscle, show that you're stronger in order to deter your enemy and prevent a bigger war. If everybody's doing the same thing and is adopting the same logic, where's this taking us?
Well, it's all in the hand of Benjamin Netanyahu. He is the one who dictating the tempo. He's the one who's going to war on Lebanon. He's the one who started an all-out war on the Gaza against the civilians, not only Hamas, and then turned against Lebanon, hit Hodeidah, and then went to Iran and assassinated Ismail Haniyeh there. He bombed the Iranian consulate in Damascus. He is the one who is escalating for his personal reason to remain in power. And because he's feeling all this victory, he doesn't feel concerned about stopping the war. On the contrary, he wants to continue. And this is why Iran is saying, I'm going to come in the war if this is what you want.
Right. Elijah Manier, military and political analyst, joining us from Brussels this hour. Thank you very much for your time.
Escalate to de-escalate. I'm shitting on my family room floor so everyone knows how dumb and bad that is.
Statement on the attack, saying that it comes in response to the killings of Hamas leader Ismail Haniyeh, Hezbollah leader Hassan Nasrallah, and Iranian general.
I mean, it's the same as preemptive strike.
As we mentioned, the IRGC says the attack is in accordance with Iran's right to legitimate.
It's a preemptive strike.
Under the United Nations Charter.
Escalate to de-escalate.
The escalation of Israel's actions supported by the U.S. in the massacre of the people of Lebanon and Gaza. The statement also warns that if Israel responds to the operation, it will face further devastating and crushing attacks. Tawhid Asadi is a writer.
The here's what not to do method.
He joins us live.
Do as I say, not as I do.
Tawhid, I'm not sure we have it. Yeah, we do actually have it up on screen right now. We see people celebrating. That's what Iranian, top right corner of our screen is what Iranian TV is showing right now. And what it's showing is people celebrating, I assume in Tehran.
Yeah, no shit, they're celebrating.
This is what we see. Let me just bring some latest updates from the ground in Tehran. We are still waiting for another statement from IRGC.
Is that surprising to anyone?
The statement is going to come soon, and we're waiting for further details on the recent attack that will be, let's say, discussed on that statement. But speaking of the previous statement, also there was this point that they have hit military and security objectives in this attack, and we are seeing some initial reports coming in state television about the successful nature of this attack. Also added to that is the statement that came from Iranian mission to the United Nations, and said in which we see this statement.
We do remember the time the entity assassinated a foreign dignitary on Iranian soil.
And legitimate response to the terrorist attacks,
something for which there was no real retaliation.
And assassination of Secretary General of Hezbollah, and of course a long list of obnoxious behaviors that is really.
What's Al Jazeera's orientation re-Iran? I mean, listen, like it's Qatari state media, so it's still a Gulf state monarchy, still ostensibly a U.S. ally, and they've carved out a niche where they can be more pro-Palestine than other sort of news organizations that touch the kind of mainstream saturation. But they're still not going to have any kind of like pro-Iran, openly pro-Iran viewpoint, even if they will accurately cover Israel's crimes.
Which indicates a possibility of a next round of attacks. And speaking of the vibe here in Tehran, we know that previously, in the past days, we saw tens of thousands of people chanting, gathering in different cities across the country, demanding for a retaliation after the assassination of Hezbollah's leader. And this puts a certain amount of pressure on the Iranian officials to react. And that was not it. We see now people chanting and waving the flags of Hezbollah, specifically in Palestine Square, somewhere very well known in.
Tell me the news, Baldwin. I don't know. Everything's going okay.
They were just if you may, there's just one.
Everything's going fine.
I'll finish that. The Iranian people were addressed by.
Not all that much is going on.
Netanyahu just today, but the message was not well received in Tehran. It received slightest attention from the people, knowing the fact that he is the person who has a long record of lying, false, baseless accusations. And now we see this vibe. We see pictures of Hezbollah, pictures of Nasrallah across the city. And I think Tehran is preparing for a wide spectrum of scenarios down the road.
Tawhid, is it over? What's next?
Well, I cannot say for the time being, but it seems that it's just
nice little quiet fall Tuesday
from the state television. It's just a first round. I think the most important thing to be monitored in the forthcoming minutes is the second statement by RGC. It would sort of show a roadmap for the forthcoming concrete plans of action. But there is this emphasis that if Israelis decide to continue this trajectory, there would be a crushing answer down the road. So
this doesn't count as the October surprise. We all saw this coming. I mean, even if through some miracle there's not a large-scale retaliation to this attack that happened today, we still have a full invasion of Lebanon that looks like it's on the verge of happening as well.
For the time being, it's just so many red lines crossed, and Iran at this point has decided
the last couple of weeks before this election are going to be insane.
Point have a paradigmatic shift of behavior, and that is something that runs the risk of the possibility of further escalations.
Okay, Tawhid Asadi joining us from Tehran. You mentioned that there's going to be a second statement from the IRGC, Iran's Revolutionary Guard Corps, so we will be looking out for what they say in that statement. Thank you very much. Now, the Israeli army said that it would
love using Iran for October surprises since the Gipper. Exactly.
The following statements to Israeli civilians as the attack from Iran was happening.
Dear citizens, a short while ago, missiles were launched from Iran into the territory of the State of Israel. You are asked to be vigilant and act exactly according to the instructions of the Home Front Command.
If you're just joining us, we are continuing with our breaking news coverage from the Middle East. Israel's military says Iran has launched almost 200 missiles towards the country. These were the scenes in Tel Aviv when Israel's air defenses intercepted some of the missiles.
I don't see how Kamala has told Joe to get this shit taken care of. Does she really want to get into office with the powder keg, Israel in the Middle East? The fact is, though, Kamala supports Israel full-heartedly. I mean, there's just no other explanation. It's not that she wants to take over with the powder keg in the Middle East, but she fully supports Israel's genocidal actions. There's no other conclusions you can possibly take. How much AIPAC, all the AIPAC conferences that she's spoken at, how much money has she taken from AIPAC? And aside from money, that's just what her ideology is.
Over Tel Aviv.
She's just confirmed that time and time again over the last several months.
Press Club and a retired colonel in the Israeli Air Force. You're joining us from Tel Aviv. Thanks for your time this evening. What do you make of what's transpired over the last 90 minutes?
I think this is another of the miscalculations that we have seen happening in the last year. First, the miscalculation.
I mean, I don't know what to make of these OSINT accounts. Like, where is this coming from? You know? Where is this coming from? U.S. President Joe Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris are currently in the White House Situation Room and have ordered the U.S. military across the Middle East to aid in the defense of Israel. You know what I mean? It's like, who is this account? This OSINT Defender account? Is it just some random person? What links, like, are there, as we've talked about endlessly over the course of, like, the Ukraine thing, are these accounts linked to some kind of actual intelligence sources? They seem to always be promoting stories and narratives that support the empire narrative, right? But, like, where is this information coming from? They have a blue check, exactly. You can trust them. They say it's open, but that inherently means NSA and CIA meddling. Are we taking OSINT Defender seriously? I don't really think that we should. I don't think that we should.
But no, you said from Yahya Sinwar and from Hezbollah.
No. Calculation from a miscalculation for Israel. I agree with my good friend Akiva Eldar that Israel should have.
I mean, they're going to have to do some kind of press briefing soon.
Peaceful solutions, but unfortunately, this is something that was forced on us, and I think now the big miscalculation is of Iran.
Wait, how was it forced on Israel?
Because if I can refresh the memory of our viewers, we were attacked a year ago by Hamas, which was immediately joined by attack by Hezbollah, and therefore we didn't choose this kind of escalation in war. And we live in the Middle East where you can't show weakness even for 1 second.
Well, okay, well, hold on. There are a couple of things I'd like to pick you up on. Sorry to interrupt, but this is a usual Israeli talking point. This was forced on us. There's so much over the last year that was a conscious decision by Israel. Yes, the October 7th attack happened, and yes, that was conducted by Hamas. Everything that happened after that, that was Israel's decision, including killing 41,500 people in Gaza, and just over the last 10 days, what is it now, 1,800 people in Lebanon.
Look, we, after the Second Lebanon War, we really chose peace. And if our enemies would have left us alone, we would do nothing. I mean, but once you were attacked, such heinous attack on October 7th, and then immediately the day after you are attacked by Hezbollah, what do you expect us to do? To tell these people, look, gentlemen, please don't do this. This is not civilized. I mean, we had...
What do we expect you to do? Maybe he's not doing ethnic cleansing for the last 70 years? Maybe that could be something you could do.
It's the same logic, talk you through frankly, all this. That any armed resistance group uses.
We weren't even doing anything. We're just small little guys.
The thing with self-defense is that
Red Kev, thanks for the Prime sub. I appreciate it.
Self-defense
Thank you.
assumes that there is a victim that is defending themselves against an act.
Is that a brand new subscriber? That's exciting.
But if you ask Hamas, of course, they would say that
brand new
Palestinians,
subscriber,
specifically those in Gaza, have been the victims of Israeli aggression, occupation, and blockade. So this
that's all in self-defense.
It cuts both ways. Does everybody have the right to self-defense? I think that's my question. Does everybody?
It'd be nice to have these kind of questions on U.S. media sometimes.
Use that as grounds to justify an attack.
Perhaps yes, but let me remind you that in 2005 we pulled out of Gaza, and the people
we pulled out of Gaza and we turned it into an open-air prison camp.
But Israel still occupies Gaza.
How come?
Well, as per the ruling of the International Court of Justice, it was either June or July, forget me.
It's crazy how revolutionary it seems to have these basic questions getting asked on TV.
When Israel controls the land,
imagine Jake Tapper saying this to somebody.
In Gaza, this is still considered under international law an occupation. This has been adjudicated in the world's top courts, and Israel lost that one. Gaza is an occupation.
Okay, you said that, and the court said that. We're still facing Hamas in Gaza, which it's charter,
I'm sorry.
By the way, like the charter of Hezbollah, called for the destruction of the state of Israel. And I don't know of any other country in the world which is threatened by extermination.
Okay, so maybe it is an occupation, but we're allowed though.
Nothing to protect itself. So, yes, I would...
Well, I think the Palestinians would probably adopt the same logic historically, right? Can I ask you about regional conflict? Do you think Benjamin Netanyahu is trying to engage Iran in a direct war?
Why can't I just say things and have them be true? This is how they're used to being treated.
He's trying to precipitate regime change in Iran, based on his comments yesterday, ostensibly addressed to Iranians. Let me see if I can find the exact quote. When Iran is finally free, and that moment will come a lot sooner than people think, everything will be different. Is Benjamin Netanyahu trying to effect regime change in Iran?
Glad everyone's eyes are finally open. I mean, it's still not enough people, but certainly a lot more people's eyes are open to this now.
I think, yes, he wants somehow to get that Iran doesn't become nuclear power, and he knows that he needs America for this. So, yes, he has something in the back of his mind that if this is an opportunity to involve America, he would push for it. As for regime change, I don't think Israelis should be involved in any speculations and ideas. We tried it in Lebanon back in 1982, and we failed. And I think Israel should talk about the regime change in Israel itself, not elsewhere.
Uri Dromi, founding director general of Jerusalem Press Club, retired colonel in the Israeli Air Force. Thank you very much for joining us on Al Jazeera.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, let's.
It's honestly, it's crazy to like how totally radical it seems just for someone to offer this kind of basic pushback on the Hasbara. There's some really interesting footage from here. Like I said, watch Israeli settlers in hysterics as Iranian missiles light up the sky above them. Serious question though, why are they always dressed like they're going to the club? Like, is this some kind of like a national uniform? Look at this freak out over these missiles. You live in this country that's been bombarding people with missile strikes and violence for the last year, and then when a small percentage of that violence gets returned to you, this is the reaction.
هذا اليهودية هذه ما تخوف لا تخاف يا بنت الناس الموت وحدة خلاص يخرب نور كي هذا اليهودية هذه ما تخوف لا تخاف يا بنت الناس الموت وحدة
The guy holding the phone laughing. He's like, come on now. Yeah, literal temper tantrum. White House's scrambling press briefing was supposed to start at 1:30. We were supposed to see Imagine Dragons tonight. Yeah, we're going to the club. We were just about to meet our MDMA guy. Where are we going to get our MDMA now? Look at this. Palestinians in Ramallah posed for selfies on an Iranian missile. This is the kind of footage that ends up being shown too. Can you believe they're celebrating? Can you believe they have the audacity to celebrate? And it's like, yeah, I can believe it. I can believe that they're celebrating, yes. It shouldn't be that hard to understand. Here's people in Gaza watching the missiles fall.
ما شاء الله الله أكبر الله أكبر والعزة لله الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر والعزة لله الله أكبر.
After watching people pull up couches to watch the bombs hit Gaza, yes, I believe it. I believe it too.
Allahu Akbar.
Yeah, it probably cannot be safe playing around with the missile, but, you know, I understand it. Anyone remember the time Gazans tried peaceful mass resistance and the occupation shot them by the thousands under a shoot to maim policy? Yeah, when they were deliberately maiming little kids and journalists and nurses. That's always the super condescending thing. Like we saw with that clip with Ta-Nehisi Coates yesterday. I don't know if anyone watched that. That's really revealing as well about the liberal mentality, about the liberal Zionist mentality. This whole idea that like all Palestinians know is violence, you know? Haven't they ever tried some kind of peaceful march? Why don't they try to organize some kind of, I don't know, boycott campaign, you know? And you see every single peaceful avenue that Palestinians have attempted to organize gets met with violence, terror, bombing, shootings, maiming, snipers. Even the BDS movement, there's a whole decade-long freak out over the BDS movement being anti-Semitic. Oh no, you can't do a boycott campaign either. We just have to shame them. Yeah, exactly. We'll just keep shaming them for the next 70 fucking years, and then things are going to be okay. Breaking news, CNN just confirmed Israel's using human shields, strategically positioning its command and control center in densely populated civilian areas. Yeah, which are apparently legitimate targets. They got close to the fence. Well, I always remember that always was something like that stuck out to me during the whole Great March of Return thing as well, you know? Well, they're approaching the border fence. What do you want them to do? But it's like, there's no border. They don't have a state. There's no border fence. It's a prison camp fence. It's not a border fence. If it's a border fence, that means the Palestinians have a state. They don't. That's what that fence is. It's not a border fence. It's a prison camp. It's a prison fence keeping them all constrained to that area and just getting assaulted by sniper fire, even getting close to it.
And that includes the White House press briefing, which has been pushed back at least 90 minutes. The latest time for the press briefing now is 19 GMT. We also know that there is going to be a Pentagon briefing around the same time. So we're hoping we're going to get a lot more detail about what has been happening. But with regard to the president, we know that for the last few
fact-based comrade, you've continued to do this.
For part of that time,
you're very annoying. I wish you all the best. Okay, take care.
They have been watching and monitoring the Iranian attack on Israel from the Situation Room, receiving regular updates from their national security team.
You got a number of chances.
President Biden has directed the U.S. military to aid Israel's defense and to shoot down the missiles that were being launched from Iran towards Israel. Now, we also know that with regard to the position of the United States and its posture in the region, we've talked extensively about that and its capabilities. We know that there have been, at least in terms of the number of soldiers there, that has been bolstered in recent days and weeks to now have a presence of about 43,000. And in terms of that, the National Security Council spokesperson John Kirby has said in recent days that he believed that the posture would be a deterrent. But clearly that has not been the case. But still, the position of the White House has been that this is a robust capability to defend U.S. interests and will also allow Israel to be.
I've just been listening. Did that person say Rob is in a different streaming location? Exactly. And anyone who makes such a false suggestion will be banned.
Attack has occurred.
Kimberly, that's really interesting, and I no longer had that in mind, that the U.S. had thought that increasing the number of troops in the region was going to be a deterrent. Interesting.
We're going to increase the number of troops to deter things. That's going to really calm things down.
Thank you very much. A reminder of what you're seeing on your screen. I'm joined by Omar Rahman, fellow at the Middle East Council on Global Affairs. You're joining us from New York. Omar, quick second of patience, if you don't mind, so I can bring our viewers up to speed on what they're seeing. Top right corner is Iranian TV. That is what Iranians are seeing on their television, and they're seeing celebration. You see the yellow flags there? That's Tehran, the Iranian capital. Celebration after Iran launched 200-plus missiles at Tel Aviv. And in the center of your screen...
If I've learned anything, when the U.S. gets involved, nothing bad happens.
2 hours
Thank
now
you.
of that
Absolutely.
attack. So it was live on our cameras. Some of the missiles were intercepted. Even when that happens, there's shrapnel. That can still be dangerous. Some of the missiles were not intercepted. Okay, Omar, thanks for your patience. How do you analyze what's happened this evening?
Well, this was expected. I mean, Iran has
a bit of a credibility problem, not responding in the past 2 weeks to the major
well known for letting
assault
cooler
on
heads
its
prevail. This is
key
what we're all
ally
waiting
and
for
partner
now.
in the region.
We're waiting to
Hezbollah
see whether the
Lebanon,
cooler heads
including
prevail.
obviously the assassination of its Secretary General Hassan Nasrallah, which was a huge blow, not only to Hezbollah and the resistance in Lebanon, but
Nothing
also
really
the
going on
entire,
today, St. Lotus.
resistance network that Iran has backed and helped forge and develop over the past 40 years. And so, Iran is in a bit of a dilemma itself. In one sense, it has to respond to that action, including also bombings in Syria and in Yemen over the past few days, or else, it's leaving its allies out to dry. At the same time, it didn't have to
The peaceful
direct attack from the
Democrats are in
Israelis or the
charge.
Americans.
So you got to vote
in
blue.
The end, I think it chose to make this attack.
It's the most important election of your life,
one we saw
folks.
back in April, because this one was not choreographed in the same way for the Israelis to respond. So we're seeing some missiles come through. Also, Israel's defense forces taking out some of those missiles. But I think this is, likely going to invite potentially the larger war that much of the region has tried to avoid over the past 11 months.
That's what I was going to ask you. Based on this Iranian response, does that...
Did you see the official stating out doing small bean posting? This is not normal. I mean, I've been told repeatedly that it is normal.
I think the Iranians said,
when you're in a war.
Better not respond or will
Apparently
not
there's been a
respond,
war
because
going on
Israelis,
for the last year. I get told over and over, well, it's normal in a war, you get attacked, you get bombed.
The type of retaliatory
So I think it is
action
normal.
back and forth that spawns a greater war. But Israel, in some senses, has been trying to invite this war. It's done provocative actions for several months, and obviously what's happened in Lebanon, I think it's very much feeling itself. Netanyahu's feeling itself. I commend you on your questioning for the Israeli guest that you had earlier in the hour. This is typical of the type of chest thumping that we're seeing from Israelis without any recognition that, Israel needed the U.S.'s help every step along the way in order to fight Hamas itself. But, Israel is capable of massive destruction, as we're seeing in Lebanon. It's capable of huge intelligence feats and, waging really destructive warfare. And so, Iran, I think, has tried to avoid that, but it's on the path to some type of war with Israel.
Yeah, I mean, that's really the question is, we don't know exactly what the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu wants. I mean, under his leadership, the Israeli military has assassinated Hezbollah chief. That's a major tactical victory for him. They've assassinated the then chief of Hamas. There is now a new chief, someone presumably Israel likes even less, in the form of Yahya Sinwar, who's in Gaza. We don't know really what Benjamin Netanyahu wants.
I feel like we kind of do.
He wants indefinite warfare in order to reshape his political fortunes. After October 7th, every analyst was saying, this is the downfall of Netanyahu. He failed the Israelis. As soon as this war comes to an end,
he's saying, Joey sounds saying baby.
Pushed back on that.
Baby wants their Lebensraum.
His coalition government, in my opinion, is very stable. And second of all, Netanyahu is a survivor, and he knows that you can use war as a kind of arena to reshape reality. And he needed to redeem himself in front of the eyes of his public. At first, that was the destruction of Gaza, maybe for all time for the Israelis. He comes in as the conquering hero who destroyed Gaza and removed it from the calculus of Israel. But I think he saw a chance, especially in Lebanon, to maybe push against Hezbollah. And when he realized, after those attacks, that he caught Hezbollah off guard and dealt them a major blow, that, the resistance network is weaker than we thought. I think they sensed weakness, and he keeps pushing. So he's pushing there in Lebanon, he's pushing in Yemen, he's pushing in Syria, and now, potentially against Iran, a war where he thinks he can bring the United States in to deal Iran a great blow.
I can't tell you the number of times. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
It's just, it's reflective of the very limited strategy Israel has. It doesn't have a strategy for an end game, because there's no military solution there. It needs.
Do people not know what Bibi is doing? It's quite clear. So I think he might have just been teeing this guy up a little bit.
You can count on me. You're going to have good old
constantly degrading its enemies' capabilities to fight. That includes
Chris. Thanks for the gifted sub.
Vis-a-vis Hamas and others, and it includes in the region itself. But there's no end game to that. Again, you can constantly degrade, mow the lawn, as they used to do. They used to call what they were doing to Hamas in the Gaza Strip. But your enemies are always going to be there. They're always going to build back, and you can never predict what comes down the road in the future in the form of the enemy, the technology they use, the capacity they have. And so Israel believes in just, Netanyahu, he says this all the time, we'll fight forever by the sword. It's just indefinite conflict. That's the worldview here.
Omar Rahman, a fellow at the Middle East
Thanks
Council
again,
on
Chris.
Global Affairs. Thank you for joining us today from New York. And there have been scenes of celebrations across the Iranian missiles.
Here's here's people celebrating in Gaza.
Refugee camp in
And
central
I'm
Gaza
sorry,
killed
I don't want to hear any
members
pearl clutching about this. I'm sure there will be. Look at them celebrating. People that have been being bombed and destroyed for the last year. To say nothing of the previous 7 years. Oh, they're celebrating. Yeah, they're celebrating.
Since the war.
Oh, they celebrated on October 7th. Yeah, no shit. That should not be surprising to anybody.
From Bethlehem in the occupied West Bank. What?
Here's a kind of interesting angle here. This kind of like let slip on CNN. Look at this report here. So CNN admits, let's hear what he says about Mossad HQ. Okay? Let's hear what he says. This CNN reporter, Jim Shudo, about Mossad HQ.
The U.S. intel view that among the targets were Israeli airfields, but also, and this is crucial, the headquarters of Mossad, the International Intelligence Service of Israel, which is inside Tel Aviv. It's in the northern part of Tel Aviv, but it's in the city. It's in a densely populated area. And of course, the concern is if you're firing, even though Iran might consider that a military target, it is in a densely populated city with civilians around it. And that's just one more layer of escalation. The U.S.
You say it's in the middle of the city, Mossad headquarters, in the middle of the city in a densely populated area surrounded by civilians. You don't say. You don't say. That's really, really interesting that they would say that on CNN. I'm going to link, if you need the link to that, I'm going to throw it in the chat there. Very, very interesting that. I want to hear that one more time just to confirm what I just heard here.
The U.S. intel view that among the targets were Israeli airfields, but also, and this is crucial, the headquarters of Mossad, the International Intelligence Service of Israel, which is inside Tel Aviv. It's in the northern part of Tel Aviv, but it's in the city. It's in a densely populated area. And of course, the concern is if you're firing, even though Iran might consider that a military target, it is in a densely populated city with civilians around it. And that's just one more layer of escalation.
One more layer of escalation, he says, as well. Very interesting, isn't it? Is the press briefing starting? Who wouldn't consider that a military target? I mean, that's what we've been told time and time again, is that it is a legitimate military target. If you don't want civilians to be put in that situation, put in harm's way, don't build your military installations around them. We've been told this over and over and over and over. Yeah, they just took an entire block of homes for one guy. Exactly, and you have people in my mentions on Twitter being like, no, 100% deserved. They were all Hezbollah. They're all Hezbollah supporters.
I'm going to be really quick here.
How many supporters of the IDF live in Tel Aviv, do you think?
Sullivan, to talk about the latest in the Middle East, so I'll turn it over to him.
Thank you, Karine, and good afternoon, everyone. I'm here
to
provide a brief report on the Iranian ballistic missile attack against Israel that occurred earlier today. I can take just a few questions because this is an ongoing situation and I need to get back to my desk. Today, Iran launched nearly 200 ballistic missiles towards targets in Israel. The United States military coordinated closely with the Israeli Defense Forces to help defend Israel against this attack. U.S. naval destroyers joined Israeli air defense units in firing interceptors to shoot down inbound missiles. President Biden and Vice President Harris monitored the attack and the response from the White House Situation Room, joined in person and remotely by their national security team. We are still working with the IDF and the authorities in Israel to assess the impact of the attack. But at this time, and I stress at this time, we do not know of any deaths in Israel. We are tracking the reported death of a Palestinian civilian.
Yeah, of course, they're going to mention that, like we talked about.
We do not know of any damage.
They don't even care about
aircraft or
Palestinian
strategic
life,
military assets
apparently.
in Israel. In short, based on what we know at this point, this attack appears to have been defeated and ineffective. This was first and foremost the result of the professionalism of the IDF, but in no small part
Professionalism of the IDF.
U.S. military and meticulous joint planning in anticipation.
This makes me sick to my stomach.
We are also aware of reports of a terrorist attack in Jaffa that took the lives of a number of Israeli civilians and wounded several others today. Our condolences go out to the families of the victims and to the family of the Palestinian civilian in Jericho. Obviously, my update here is based on early reports, and we reserve the right to amend and adjust as necessary as we gather more information. The word fog of war was invented for a situation like this. This is a fluid situation. We will consult with the Israelis on next steps in terms of the response and how to deal with what Iran has just done, and we will continue to monitor for further threats and attacks from Iran and its proxies. We are particularly focused on protecting U.S. service members in the region. And with that, I'll take just a few questions. Yeah.
Thanks, Jake. Is the administration making any preparations to evacuate U.S. citizens from Lebanon or elsewhere in the region?
We have been very clear for some time now that U.S. citizens should avail themselves of commercial means to depart Lebanon, given everything that's going on.
And pay yourself.
We have said that from this podium, from multiple podiums. We continue to say that, but we have not begun triggering a non-combatant emergency evacuation, a NEO, and do not have an intention.
You pay for a flight
at
yourself.
this time. If that changes, we'll let you know. But we continue to reinforce the point: American citizens in Lebanon should follow the guidance from the State Department, which is to find civilian commercial means to depart, because in extremis, we may not be able to get them out safely. Yes.
Thanks, Jake. What is the U.S. view on whether Israel should retaliate, and what is your concern about this leading to a wider escalation of war in the region?
We've had some initial discussions with the Israelis in the aftermath of this at the military level and also at the White House to Prime Minister's office level. We'll continue those conversations in the hours ahead. I'm not going to prejudge or get ahead of anything. We want to have some deep consultations with the Israelis, and I'll have more to report to you after we get the opportunity for deeper discussions.
And escalation in the region?
Obviously, this is a significant escalation by Iran, a significant event.
De-escalation.
It is equally significant that we were able to step up with Israel.
Significant escalation.
In which no one was
after
killed.
they've literally attacked Tehran multiple times.
We are now going to look at what the appropriate next steps are to secure, first and foremost, American interests, and then to
Israel
promote stability.
assassinates Hamas officials in Tehran.
Back in April, the president's
and this is the
message to Israel
escalation.
was to take the win when the U.S. and Israel were able to.
Yeah, nothing happened, and it's an escalation. It's simultaneously nothing, and it's also the worst thing that's ever happened.
I will not, from this podium, share the president's recommendations. He will have the opportunity to share them directly. We're going to have, as I said,
It's an escalation when Iran does it, and it's defending themselves when it's Israel. Or it's obviously an escalation when Palestinians defend themselves as well.
Assessment, or in terms of what our expectations are of the Israelis or the advice that we will give them.
So will he be speaking to Prime Minister Netanyahu today?
I don't have anything to announce from this podium, but I can tell you that he is tracking this minute by minute. We are very much deeply in touch with the Israelis, and insofar as we have calls to read out, we'll make sure to read them out with you. Just last question, then I'll turn it over.
Thank you, Jake. In April, after Iran struck Israel, the U.S. issued a number of sanctions as a consequence. This morning, the president said there would be severe consequences if Iran carried out this attack. What are those consequences, and are they more severe than sanctions?
Totally legitimate question, and that answer will come based on the conversations and consultations we have with our Israeli counterparts. It's too soon for me to stand before you today and give you an answer. What I can tell you is this. We are proud of the actions that we've taken alongside Israel to protect and defend Israel. We have made clear that there will be consequences, severe consequences.
Been a hectic morning, got to get back, haven't had lunch.
Make that the case. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Jake. Thank you, Jake. Okay, on to the rest of the programming here.
Where do we see this going? Great
President
question.
Biden was briefed by his
This is the question of the
Homeland
day.
Security Advisor Liz Sherwood Randall on the latest impacts of Hurricane Helene, and this afternoon he will receive an interagency briefing on the Hurricane Helene response.
So it didn't really say much at all. Didn't really say much at all, but again, it's the same rhetoric that we've been predicting. You know, this is the escalation that's happened now, and now they have to think about what the retaliation of this escalation is going to be.
Consultations we have with our Israeli counterparts. It's too soon for me to stand before you today.
Try to find some more Western coverage.
Coming up to the mic, he's probably going to talk about immigration efforts there. But we're going to bring it back to our Jay O'Brien, who's at the White House for us while this briefing is going on. Jay, the National Security Advisor there, talking about, and Alex Brachet, thank you for joining us now as our breaking news coverage continues. We were both listening, Jay, to Jake there, confirming that U.S. destroyers did shoot down some of those inbound missiles. So we were talking about the Iron Dome was able to deflect, of course, a number of those missiles coming in from Iran in that first wave of attacks. But now we are getting confirmation that the U.S. was able to assist as well and working with the IDF now to also assess the impact of those missiles that did move into Israel. Right now, apparently, according to Jake Sullivan, no deaths in Israel at this time. That's good news. The attack appears to be
That's good news. Doesn't sound objective.
Ineffective, Jake Sullivan said, right, Alex? And also, you're learning some more information with regard to the Air Force, yes?
Well, so that's right. Our global affairs team has been working on this, and an IDF official told reporters that continuing on into Tuesday night, the Israeli Air Force is going to continue conducting powerful strikes all over the Middle East. And so, again, you know, the big question was, you know, how is this going to ramp up what's already a heightened, intense situation there? What was going to be the response there? And we're getting a little bit of a telegraph here, which I don't think that anybody is shocked to see. But it's clear that, you know, there's going to be a response from Israel into tonight.
Right, and the question is, how big will that response be?
Absolutely.
Yeah, there have been these little incursions inside Lebanon. Now, you know, air assets in full force protecting the area and clearly looking for any more action on behalf of Iran as well, yes?
Well, yeah, but one of the things that was interesting going into, you know, today's retaliatory attack, you know, Israel had mentioned that all of the attacks that it had carried out were in direct response and in their words, measured, right? And so, with this, and even though it does seem like a lot of this was thwarted by Israeli and American forces, you know, how does that retaliatory action play out? What is
show some of those strikes on
their
the
eyes?
And Jay,
military
we know
base.
that the president was in the sit room with the vice president, and of course, all his key leaders watching everything go down once the first wave of attacks came through. Iran threatening a second wave of missile attacks, however, but it seems this moment in Tel Aviv, things are calm. People have been allowed to come out of the shelters, get back onto the streets. But clearly, I guess it's a wait and see on two fronts. Will Iran attack Israel once again? And what exactly is Israel going to do about it?
Yeah, and Kira, Jake Sullivan just answered a few questions that a lot of us had in the White House.
They cut the video right at the interception and just before all the MIRVs fired. Yeah, it does seem selective in what footage they're showing.
Israel in shooting down these ballistic missiles, but we did not know how. We didn't know what military assets were used. Were they fighter jets, etc.? Jake Sullivan says they were naval destroyers shooting intercept missiles, so shooting their own.
By the way, it's not actually etc. It's etc. If you're a professional broadcaster, you might want to get that right. This is just painful to watch. Here's what Sky News is saying: IDF vows retaliation.
And intelligence assets is that normally when you know something, you just leave it there until you need it.
Here's Sky
they've
News.
Decided in the last couple of weeks to need everything, and so they're actually paying off all of their intelligence contacts, and they are now attacking the places where they know their enemies are in this ring of fire that surrounds them. So they're going for broke, at least tactically, over the next few days.
Indeed, that's certainly what it looks like. Professor Clark, we're going to keep you there as we're going to continue our coverage of the developments here in the Middle East. So do stay with us. Good evening. It's 8 o'clock in the UK, 10 o'clock here in Beirut. I'm Yalda Hakim, and we've been monitoring the escalating situation here in the
Someone put together a 15-minute supercut of all the missiles hitting targets. Surely they were all intercepted.
Down on Israel, as sirens sounded across the country, with people told to take shelter.
What do we do when we fall down, Master
200
Bruce?
missiles were launched. In the past hour, Iranian state TV claimed that 80% of the missiles launched hit their targets, but the Israelis say there were very few injuries and that civilians can now come out of their shelters. Well, a series of explosions were also heard in Tel Aviv. Iran says it launched the missiles in response to the assassination of the leader of Hezbollah and the killing of other senior Hezbollah and Hamas militants. Well, videos have been shared on social media.
It's interesting how they manage information when they decide to downplay damage and when they try to highlight it. Yeah, and this is one thing that's interesting, I think, about watching Western coverage of this. And just this whole idea that it was totally nothing, no damage was done, we totally escaped unscathed, and it's also this massive escalation that demands a counterattack. And of course they're showing people celebrating, the hand-wringing about that. Oh, they're celebrating these violent Palestinians.
Online, people at the Al-Aqsa hospital in Gaza appeared to be cheering as they watched the missiles being fired at Israel, which really gives you a sense of the tensions that remain after a year.
Yeah, there's tension still after the year of mass murder, I think.
Attack on Israel.
There's still
by Hamas
tensions
militants,
in the region.
And they killed 1,200 Israelis and took several hundred civilians into Gaza, as well as members of the IDF. But then, of course, we saw a year-long war in Gaza.
People did get hurt. They fell down and scraped their knees because they were wearing skirts on the way to the club. Exactly.
The cheering that was taking place in Gaza. Now, you're looking at the scenes in Jaffa, where we understand that there was a shooting in a mixed Arab-Jewish neighborhood in Tel Aviv. Police say that 4 people were killed, as well as 2 gunmen, although Israeli media is reporting that up to 8 people died. Now, of course, this all comes after Israeli troops launched a ground incursion into Lebanon in what the Israeli military called a limited, localized and targeted ground operation against Hezbollah. It's understood Sir Keir Starmer has spoken to both the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and the King of Jordan this evening. Well, let's just show you those ballistic missiles that were launched, raining down over the skies of Israel following Iran launching that attack. Downing Street, as we've reported, have said that they completely condemn Iran's actions. And in the last few minutes, we were hearing from the National Security Advisor of the United States, Jake Sullivan, saying that Iran has dramatically
Sir Keir Starmer is on this.
The situation. Let's just have a listen in as we heard sirens as well as those missiles raining down and then being intercepted.
UK completely condemns Iran's actions. How dare Iran do this totally unprovoked thing, this unprovoked escalation, Brandon? These savage concentration camp inmates cheering as Nazi Germany cities get shelled and Soviet tanks roll in.
The IDF said that nearly 200 missiles were launched into Israel by Iran, and you can see the sound of sirens. They warned residents and citizens to seek shelter, and much of the country were in their bunkers as this attack was launched by Iran into Israel. According to the IDF and
Israel's only killed over 1,000 people in Lebanon alone in the last week. What did they ever do to deserve this aggression?
They did say the situation is fluid and they are in a position to, there were no deaths. But we do understand that there were some small injuries as well. He did say a Palestinian was injured. Let's just have a listen to Matt Miller, who's speaking at the State Department at the moment.
The President's national security team in monitoring this attack as it was unfolding.
This fucking psycho.
As, response. As the President has made clear, our support for Israel's security is ironclad.
Yeah,
we will continue to stand with the people of Israel at this critical moment. With that, Matt.
Thanks, Matt. So I think this probably goes without saying, but just to make sure we get on the record. So in terms of what happened in Israel, there no damage to any U.S. facilities, no injuries, no nothing.
At this time, we are not aware of any damage to U.S. facilities. As you know, we issued an order earlier today for our personnel.
I know he loves smirking when he gets asked about murdered Palestinians. It's disturbing.
At their homes, we have full accountability for all our personnel. We're not aware of any civilian casualties inside Israel. There, let alone an American citizen casualty. There is one report of a Palestinian who died in the West Bank, but no damage to any U.S. facility either.
And then both you and the National Security Advisor just a few minutes ago talked about this being a brazen and unacceptable escalation.
Very high on the wall list, absolutely.
But does the administration see anything that Israel has done over the course of the last 3 weeks as escalatory?
So certainly they have done things to expand the conflict. But if you look at the actions that they have taken, they were bringing terrorists to justice, terrorists who have launched attacks on Israeli civilians.
Sorry, the hundreds of people in the city block that they incinerated to get Nasrallah, are they all terrorists?
By Iran arming and funding terrorist groups across the Middle East, and the attack today just demonstrated the danger of those actions. What you saw was Iran launching a state-on-state attack to protect and defend the terrorist groups that it has built, nurtured, and that it controls. So there is a difference between the actions that we have seen Israel take to defend.
This is the retaliation. This is the escalation. There's a huge difference in the fact that one side inflicts thousands of casualties.
Israel expand the nature of its attacks against Hezbollah, but is a very different type of attack than what we saw today from a state.
It was different because they killed hundreds of people to assassinate one guy.
Lebanon and the northern front.
It's very different.
The situation there is, unstable and uncertain. I know that you guys have been asking Americans who might want information about assistance and possibly leaving to sign up on a form. Can you give us an update on the numbers of those and whether or not you're planning to I don't know, to do anything in the way
totally just glazing over the invasion of Lebanon, of course.
Capabilities or charter.
That's a de-escalatory invasion.
Sure. So you're right. As we often do in these situations, we have directed U.S. citizens who are in Lebanon.
Yeah, Lebanon is a state, so is Syria, so is Yemen. I mean, Palestine is, but not technically, not legally.
How to depart Lebanon, and we're providing them whatever information.
But yeah, attacking Lebanon is state-on-state violence. Attacking Syria is state-on-state violence. Attacking Yemen, state-on-state violence. And attacking Tehran, which Israel has done. Attacking Tehran. That's state-on-state violence.
There are a number of American citizens who live in Lebanon who have lived there for years and do not want to depart the country. So in terms of the status on the ground, the airport is still open. Commercial flights are operating, although they are available at times at reduced capacity. We are working right now with airlines to provide additional flights with more seats for American citizens. It's something that we hope to turn on in the next few days, and we will be in touch with American citizens if and when we're able to expand that capability.
Iran is bringing terrorists to justice. They've killed 1,000 people in Lebanon in the last couple of days.
Reserved for Americans.
Now, we're working with, I can't get into the details, but we're working with commercial carriers to ensure that capability. And when we have further information and we've locked this down, it's something we'll communicate directly with American citizens who've asked for information, and then I'll be happy to come and talk about it here at the briefing room.
Thanks.
Yeah, Jim.
So given that the Secretary and the National Security Advisor just said that this attack by Iran is sort of definitively escalatory in nature, I know that you've been telling us, the Secretary even told us that for months you've been encouraging the Israelis not to respond to attacks and provocations in such a way that escalates anything further. Or is the Secretary going to continue to offer that same advice to the Israelis now in the wake of these missile strikes?
I'll say a couple things about that. First, of course, Israel has the right to defend itself, as any nation does. In terms of what Israel's response will be, of course, there must be consequences for Iran for this attack. We've made clear that there must be consequences. I'm not going to get into what those consequences are today, but there are things on which we will be coordinating with our Israeli counterparts. And I think in the immediate aftermath of this attack, we are going to coordinate with them on what any response might be. I think it's important that we are able to defeat this attack through successful work with Israel and with our partners, and we will work with them on what a response might look like, but I'm not at the position just 2.5 hours after this event occurred to offer what that might look like today.
The Iranian Foreign Ministry people have said that now that they gave the U.S., I don't know who, a heads up in advance of these missile strikes today through diplomatic channels. Is that true?
That is absolutely false. We had no kind of warning from the government of Iran that they were going to launch such an attack. Yeah.
How dare they not tell us about their attack ahead of time?
You're not going to detail what the consequences are going to look like yet. Understandably, you guys are in conversations with the Israelis about that. Can you give us a sense for how U.S. officials are thinking about this right now in terms of magnitude of a response? Will it be more severe than the U.S. response to the Iranian attack on Israel in April, given your...
So I think it's too early to get into what the response might be. As I said, we're just a couple hours after this event having
occurred.
How did Reuters
know
all of
that?
us inside the United States be able
How
to
did
take
Reuters
stock
know
of
that?
the attack, be able to
Great
take
question.
stock of what occurred. As I said, there are initial assessments, but we need time to collect all of the information, and then we need time to talk.
These monsters didn't even warn Israel ahead of time.
To talk to other partners in the region about the way forward.
Absolutely did know beforehand. I saw his smirk.
But it is clear that this was once again a significant escalation by Iran. When you see Iran launching attacks on another state, ultimately to come to the defense of a terrorist organization. It is an escalation, and Israel has the right to defend itself, but we will coordinate with them on what any response looks like.
How much more worried are you about a regional war today than you were in previous days before this attack occurred?
So I've gotten that question a number of times over the past year, and I never want to try and calibrate our level of concern, only to say, or other than to say, that preventing the outbreak of a full-scale regional conflagration has been one of our priorities since October 7th. It's something that we immediately identified was a risk after Hamas launched its brutal attacks on Israel. And
is he saying Iran is escalating de-escalate, or is that escalating to de-escalate doesn't work and is absurd?
In the past 12 months where it looked like we might reach such a conflagration. April 13th is one of them, quite obviously. And the United States, through a combination of deterrence and diplomacy, has been able to prevent such an outbreak of full-scale war. And we will continue to try and prevent an outbreak of full-scale war in the days and weeks ahead.
Just a few more questions. Is Iran's nuclear program a legitimate target for an Israeli response?
Again, I don't want to get into, and this is not to say that I'm ruling anything out and that I'm ruling anything in, but I would answer any question this way, which is, we want to have these conversations directly with our Israeli counterparts over the coming days. It's clear that this was an unacceptable attack, and as we made clear before this attack, there will be consequences for it, but I think it's appropriate that we discuss those consequences with our Israeli counterparts before we talk about them publicly.
Any other countries involved in defending Israel alongside the United States?
There were partners, as I said in my opening comments, who assisted in the defense of Israel. I will let all of those partners speak to their own
anything at all about them invading Lebanon, or
as far as the U.S. assessment is
certainly this initial wave of an attack is over, which is not to say that there are other waves coming or that there.
Yeah, we talked a lot about that earlier.
There are other waves coming. We saw an initial
Trump ending the Iran nuclear deal
today, against the state of Israel. Certainly, it would be incredibly reckless and would continue to be escalatory were Iran to launch further attacks on Israel, and we'll be monitoring in the hours ahead.
There have been a lot of parallels drawn between Iran's attacks on Israel we saw in April and what happened today. The big difference is that back in the spring, Iran did message for weeks the kind of attack it was going to carry out against Israel, as opposed to this time around. It seemed to be very sudden by comparison. That lack of warning, public messaging, do you read into that? Is there any diplomatic significance?
You know, I don't want to try to make assessments about why Iran made the decisions it made or why it kind of telegraphed them publicly last time and didn't do so this time. Obviously, we had some indication that an attack might be in the works. You saw us talking about that. We made clear, we gave warnings to our Israeli counterparts about it earlier today, and I think they came and read out some of those conversations publicly. So we had indications that there may be some such attack. I can't speak to why they made the decision to not telegraph it as publicly as they did last time. It doesn't change the fundamental nature of the attacks, which is that this was an unacceptable and brazen action by the state of Iran.
An unacceptable and brazen action. How dare them then not give weeks of notice before their attack?
But can you say anything about, are the discussions happening now? Have Israeli officials laid out any potential options for retaliation?
There are discussions that are ongoing. There were discussions that were happening between the United States and Israel as the attacks were unfolding.
Yeah, did Israel warn the citizens of Lebanon before their pagers exploded?
Officials in this building, officials in the White House, and I won't speak to the Pentagon, but I would assume by officials at the Pentagon in the immediate aftermath of the attacks, just in the last couple of hours, and those conversations will continue through the rest of the day and, of course, in the days to come.
Thank you. Matt, did the U.S. have any indication whether or not they were successful that the Iranians intended to strike U.S. interests or assets in the region?
I'm going to defer to the Pentagon to speak to specific operational details as to what the Iranians might have been targeting. They're obviously in the best position to monitor that and to speak to it. And I know they're having a briefing later today. I'll defer that question to them.
Okay. I mean, we understand that the embassy had all of its employees go home and shelter in place. Just want to confirm
that was out of an abundance of caution, knowing that an attack on Tel Aviv might be in the works. And so we took that step out of Tel Aviv and potentially Jerusalem as well. So we took that step out of an abundance of caution. But in terms of what specific sites Iran was targeting, I will defer to my colleagues at the Pentagon.
Yeah, if you bury your bases under civilian infrastructure, they're legitimate targets.
Were engaged this time. Without getting into specifics as to who it was,
they've repeatedly told us this.
Was there less support for their engagement this time around?
I think that's still a specific. Maybe it's a generality. Either way, I'm just not going to get into it, other than say that there were partners that were engaged with us in this defense of Israel, and I will let every country speak to their own participation.
Okay, it's not a specific. It's just, I mean,
it's more specific than I'm willing to share at this point.
And just to clarify, I understand consultations are ongoing with the Israelis. What does the U.S. believe is the right course of action now? A response or diplomacy?
So again, I think it is important that we have those conversations with Israel before we read them out publicly. Obviously, we do not want to see this conflict continue to escate. That said,
well, James, they say zero casualties, you lose, but they also say this is the worst thing that's ever happened and we got to retaliate right away.
This issue privately with our partners before we read them out publicly.
Okay, and in previous instances, it had become known that that part of the way, as you mentioned, the U.S. deterred Iran from taking action was through diplomacy, including the pushing of the potential of ceasefire talks, a potential breakthrough in Gaza. That seems remote now. What is the status of ceasefire talks, either in Gaza or in Lebanon, that the U.S. had been pushing in the weeks prior to these developments?
It's a really good question, and I will say, I went into some of this detail here yesterday. Where we are on the ceasefire talks in Gaza is that the terrorist group that Iran funds, Hamas, has been unwilling to come to the table to engage. the past several weeks.
They've been unwilling to come to the table to engage
yes,
with our
it's true
deal that suggests that they should not exist.
We have not been able to advance these ceasefire talks, but it's not because of any lack of effort by the United States or our partners in the region. It's because the terrorist organization that
This
Iran
motherfucker,
has sponsored
man.
for years and years and years has refused
How do you
to come
lie
to the
like
table.
this?
So if Iran wants to use the breakdown of ceasefire talks as an excuse for its actions,
Look at him,
today,
he's smiling, too.
needs to
He
point
knows.
to the terrorist group that it controls. It's
He's got to
Hamas
tell. It's
that
like poker.
has been
He's got to tell.
responsible in
He
recent
starts
weeks
smiling.
for the breakdown of those talks.
He knows it's
Is it
bullshit.
your understanding
Oh,
that
they
that
don't
was
want to
one of
go
the
to the
reasons
come to the
that they decided
negotiating
No,
table.
I was responding
Okay,
to the question. Yeah.
Last one clarification.
Fucking
I mean,
liar.
obviously these talks require time, resources. It engages top U.S. officials. Are they still a worthwhile investment of the U.S.'s time when it appears that other parties are not?
No, look,
engaged
we
in
are
that?
going to, so we are not going to give up on reaching a ceasefire in Gaza because we believe it is the best way to free the hostages. It is the best way to alleviate the suffering of the Palestinian people. It is the best way to ensure long-term peace and stability.
Yeah, Hamas
for
is
the
not coming to the
entire
table when
region.
Israel's
No,
just
of course, we are
assassinating their top
continuing to stay engaged on
negotiator.
this. But in any kind of ceasefire talks, when you're talking about two parties to a conflict, you need both parties to engage. And right now we have a refusal to engage by one of those parties.
One of those parties. This guy is so
Have
shameless.
you abandoned the
In Lebanon, so look, we ultimately do want to see a ceasefire. We ultimately want to see a diplomatic resolution. But as I said yesterday, we do support Israel's right to defend itself against terrorist organizations. Hezbollah has continued to launch terrorist attacks across the board, and Israel's taking steps to defend itself against those attacks.
And have killed over 1,000
You
people.
mentioned there was, before the attack, that you weren't told by the Iranians that they were going to attack, but you'd had some indication. What was the
These people
indication?
are
Was
really
that
unbelievable.
sort of from satellites able to see things moving around? Are you able to tell us anything more about that?
So I am not able to tell you anymore, unfortunately. Obviously, you've seen all around the world before the outbreak of conflicts that the United States at times has the ability to gather information about what is likely to happen. That was the case here. I just can't say any more about it. But it was not through any conversations with Iran, direct or indirect.
Some small amount of intelligence was declassified so that you could make that warning ahead of time.
I'm not able to get into it any more than what we said publicly already.
In that period between informing the world and the Israelis that of this information, was there any effort to, other than the public statements, to reach out to the Iranians to say, don't do this?
So I will answer that by saying we have made clear for some time that we have the ability
count
to
on me.
send
You're gonna have good
messages
old
to Iran
Rob
when it
to,
is
talk you
in
through
our
all
interest to
this.
do so. And without speaking to any messages in particular, we have made clear the position of the United States that Iran should not launch this attack, that it would be a mistake for Iran to launch this attack. And I think I'll leave it at that.
And I think the Iranian mission to the UN has talked about, they did send some message. I'm not sure whether it's before, minutes before, after the missiles were launched, or is there anything you can tell us about when that was received and sort of the nature of that message?
It wasn't received because that report's not true. I mean, it's just I have seen the statement from Iran. I saw first stories that they warned us in advance. Then I saw stories that they warned us shortly in advance. It's just not true. We received no advance warning from Iran about this attack.
Okay, and since the
Diego,
attack,
thank you for gifting us up. I
Sorry,
appreciate it a
sorry. I'll
lot.
just
Thank
note
you.
that this is not the first time that Iran has said things about supposed interactions with the U.S. government and messages it has sent to the U.S. government that have not been true. They have done that a number of times over the last few months, and this is one of those examples.
You're saying up till now, up till when you took the podium, I guess there was no sort of diplomatic note from the Iranians explaining that.
Count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
From in the UN.
Dr.
They
Maggot,
said
thanks
that
for
this
gifting us up.
attack in response to the violations for their sovereignty and also attacks against their nationals. Now, sovereignty, the attack on Ismail Haniyeh on their territories, do you think this is a legitimate argument for them?
No, of course it's not. If you look at the supposed argument about attacks on their sovereignty, I will say, first of all, that's an event that happened weeks ago, and what's changed in the weeks since then? You've seen the death of the leader of a terrorist organization that Iran sponsors, funds, controls. That's what's changed. And
Along
to the
with hundreds of
extent
other
that
people in the city block
any
that was
Iranian
leveled.
officials have been killed in the past few days in Lebanon or in Syria, it's because they were meeting with terrorist organizations, meeting with terrorist leaders, and it goes to the point I made a moment ago.
And who decides who's a terrorist organization and who's not? The United States of America and Israel.
What you saw Iran do today was come to the defense of a terrorist organization. I don't think it holds water when you look at all the events of this past few weeks.
We declare who is and is not a terrorist organization.
With Iran's sovereignty. It has to do with the fact that a number of the terrorist organizations that Iran has set up for years as a way to undermine and attack the state of Israel have been weakened, first over the past few months and then most recently over the past few weeks. It's quite clear that's what they're responding to.
Okay, and one question on Lebanon. I know now everybody is concerned about a widened war, about escalation, but also there are concerns about repercussions in Lebanon. I'm talking about the humanitarian situation, about maybe civil war at some point. So are you talking to the Lebanese? What are your concerns? What are you doing?
The IRGC is also considered a terrorist organization by the U.S. So the standard seems clear, U.S. enemy equals terrorist.
And their role in the stability inside within Lebanon. Who are your partners in Lebanon?
So let me speak to first, you kind of mentioned on the way into the question, the humanitarian situation. We are working to address the humanitarian situation in Lebanon. I would note that the United States has been one of the, if not the largest contributor to humanitarian relief for the Lebanese people going back years, and we will continue to work to provide humanitarian
they should be thanking
for
you.
the Lebanese people. And we are coordinating with our partners in the region, with international organizations about the shape and nature of those relief efforts, even as we speak. When it comes to the political situation in Lebanon, look, Lebanon has been plagued by instability, as I know you know far better than me, for some time. And certainly not the only, but one of the driving factors of Lebanon's instability has been the fact that Hezbollah plays a significant role in the political organization of Lebanon and has held a veto.
So they're not a terrorist
over,
group.
Lebanon's ability to move
They're
forward.
a major
with a new
political
president,
party.
and has held a veto over the security situation of Lebanese civilians. It's because of Hezbollah's refusal to abide with UN Security Council 1701 and actually pull back from the border, that as they were supposed to do.
Now they're very concerned about the Security Council.
We're in this situation today. So I think it's too early, obviously, to say how this conflict will shape out in the next few weeks. But what we are going to be working to do is to try to seize this moment and really hope that the Lebanese people can seize this moment against very difficult odds, because there are still a number of Hezbollah fighters who have access to arms and equipment inside Lebanon, but seize this moment to try to establish actual political stability for Lebanon.
Who do you want to do that?
So look, I'm not...
You're listening to a State Department spokesperson, Matthew Miller, there, reiterating that in accordance with U.S. iron...
Man, it's just enough to drive you crazy, isn't it? It's enough to drive you absolutely crazy. Yeah, cut away from that question. Sorry, I missed the actual question. What did they just cut away from? What was the question she was asking? Repeating the Iraq war justification.
Beyond the one that Dan mentioned, but it's something that we'll obviously be, keeping a close eye on to protect our forces.
Secondly, were there any other nations other than the United States and Israel who took part in intercepting?
It's not a border because borders are negotiated by treaties between nation states.
Yeah, I don't have anything to provide on that, and obviously I wouldn't speak for other countries from here. Yes, sir.
Israel is a series of lines of withdrawal or armistice.
To the European allies, and if you ask for military support in protecting Israel in case of another attack from Israel, the proxies, or is at the moment it's only the U.S. Helping Israel military-wise?
Well, I'll allow other countries to speak for themselves. I will say, and we'll put a readout on this this afternoon, as soon as we're done here. The Secretary did have an opportunity to talk to his French counterpart earlier this morning.
Not any truth to the rumor that you're a literal demon.
Talk about the situation in the Middle East. This was before the Iranian attack occurred. And so, we'll get that out momentarily. broadly speaking, though, again, in terms of any European coordination or cooperation with Israel, that's really for individual countries to talk to. I won't speak to them. Let me go to the phone real quick before I get in trouble. Task and Purpose, Jeff Schogel.
Thank you. I understand that the destroyers fired about a dozen interceptors. Did they hit any of the missiles? If so, how many?
Yeah, thanks, Jeff. So again, we're, as you highlight, they fired the interceptors. We're still assessing, again, outcomes of that. So I can't really, I just don't have more information to provide at this time. Okay, let me go to Heather from USNI.
Hi, thank you so much. So you mentioned that the United States has the ability and intent to respond if any of its service members are attacked. Over on Friday, you had two U.S. destroyers and a LCS come under attack from the Houthis. Which is an Iranian proxy group. So would that give, is there any intention to launch any attacks in response to those service members coming under attack?
Well, first of all, Heather, as you are aware, there were no U.S. service members injured in any of those attacks. And as always, we will respond appropriately at a time and place of our choosing, but I'm not going to telegraph or speculate on any punches at this time. All right, and Patrick Tucker, Defense One.
But Iran is supposed to telegraph these things.
Yeah, thanks for doing this. So on the announcement...
Chad, I'm going to have to probably get going soon. I got to do an interview with Derek Davison in like 30 minutes, and I would like to take a little bit of time to prepare for that. I want to do an interview with him. I considered doing it on the show right now, but it's for the podcast, and I do want to take a couple minutes to prepare for that and make sure that I have some questions planned and it's not just totally improvised. I just want to assure shareholders this is the most missiles possible. If you have been tuning in today and you've appreciated the analysis and the coverage today, please subscribe if you can. Around halfway to the sub goal today. So if you have appreciated the conversation and the coverage and the analysis today, this kind of felt like a somewhat historic day. Who knows what the result will be? Everything is happening.
You can count on me.
So who knows?
Good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Gilf of Tonkin, thank you for the 30 months. I appreciate that. So we're gonna see where it goes, folks. We're gonna see if is it a historic day or is it just another day of balancing on the knife edge of World War III. Who knows? But yes, if you do want to support the program, folks, please do subscribe if you can. You can gift subs or bits or whatever it is, tips, whatever it is. It's all very helpful. And I do appreciate it a whole lot. We are halfway to the sub goal.
Member of the Friendship Triangle.
Lil Baby Beef, thank you for 5 gifted subs. That's very, very kind of you. Lil Baby Beef. Rob likes to sub and wants the tips. Yes. Nothing ever happens, folks. Proven wrong daily. I mean, it was what we were saying earlier. It's just I think we've gotten so used to stuff always happening that I think we've lowered the bar. We've lowered the goalposts. We've moved the goalposts of what constitutes something happening. I think if there's not a nuclear response to this attack today, then nothing ever happens, folks. Will be saying, look, as we told you, nothing ever happens. But it's been now multiple years of stuff always happening constantly. I think we've lost sight of what constitutes something happening or not happening. Nice try, Dr. Maggot. You tried to own me and you got owned yourself. Hyper-normalizing more and more all the time. It is a little bit like that, isn't it? It is a little like that. Anyway, chat, we're a mere 12 subs to go to get to the goal. If there's anyone else that would like to support this program, please do. It's the only way I'm able to keep the show on the air each and every day, the show that you love. It's the only way I'm able to do it. is through the very generous support of this community.
You're gonna have a good old rock to talk you through all this.
Perfect Speller, thank you for the gifted sub. Thank you, Perfect Speller. Last chance, folks. I'm going to work on it. I'm going to work on the audio issues. Dr. Maggot. Well, catalepsy kills, you know, I'm always trying to help out these small streamers. These small-time streamers. But, you know, he's going to be talking about Iran and all this stuff, so. There's still a few moments if any brave heroes want to come through and support this program. There's about another 30 seconds left to do it. It's still possible, in theory. I don't know if I'm going to be around tomorrow because I'm going to be on the move. But Thursday I will be back. Thursday, tentatively talking to Matt Bors and Ben Clarkson of the Justice Warriors comic book and its upcoming sequel. That's what's going on Thursday. Probably will not be around tomorrow because I'm on the move. Take care, folks.